Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I hope you're all doing well. I'm guessing that notifications won't go out for some people on this live stream because in the last hour I posted a recorded video about the Sebastian Rogers case. So when you post like one video after another, like the notifications get messed up. However, we are here for the sentencing of Axel Rudakubana. Who is he? He is the Southport stabber. This happened in July of last year, where a dance class, a Taylor Swift-inspired dance class, right at the beginning of the summer school holidays, was interrupted in the most violent of manners when then 17-year-old Axel Rudakubana, he's now 18, he was 17 at the time, bust in to this dance class, brutally murdered three little girls. These three little girls, Elsie, Alice, and BB. 7 years old, 9 years old, and just 6 years old. They were brutally stabbed to death by this absolute freak. A freak. It beggars belief. It beggars belief. That is the face that those three little girls saw in their very final moments on earth. 8 other little girls were stabbed but survived. The 2 teachers in the dance class tried valiantly to fight him off. They were both injured. So he pled guilty on Monday. His trial was due to start, but he pled guilty at the very, last moment to 3 counts of murder, 10 counts of attempted murder, 8 against children, 2 against the adults in the class. On searching his house, they found that he had the terrible poison, the toxin, ricin. He also was in possession of the Al-Qaeda guidebook. So he's also been found guilty, or pled guilty, to possessing a weapon, which was actually a kitchen knife. So you can't criminalize kitchen knives, can you? How would you chop your vegetables up if you criminalize kitchen knives? He took a kitchen knife from his house. That's what he used. So brandishing a weapon, also for possession of ricin, and for possession of terrorist materials, aka the Al-Qaeda guidebook. So he's in court this morning for his sentencing. Yeah, that's his mugshot. That's his mugshot. So court started at 11. I think there is, like the actual sentencing, I think is going to be live streamed. The court is currently on lunch. It's currently 1:29 p.m. here in the UK. Court has broken for lunch. So there has been no cameras in the court in the morning, but there has been live tweeting. So we're going to look at what the reporters have been tweeting out during court. And there is a court feed. The Sun has actually got a court feed. So it's just not switched on at the moment. So I think the actual sentencing is going to be televised. What courts are doing in the UK, because historically cameras, no cameras, not even still photography, has been allowed in courts in the UK. But in the last couple of years, there's been a trial of sentencing being televised. But that doesn't include things like victim impact statements and stuff like that. And it appears that an awful lot happened this morning in court. So I've come live to go through what happened, and then we'll stay live until the actual sentencing itself, and hopefully that live feed will go live and we'll be able to watch it. So let's start with this. How did we get here to this terrible, absolutely terrible event, just 20 miles away from my front door? Southport is just 20, it's probably less, about 20 miles away from my front door. So the government have come out and said that there were failings. All right, Axel Rudakubana, this is from BBC News, did not appear out of the blue. By the time he carried out the brutal murders of 3 girls, the teenager was well known to police, anti-extremism authorities, and a number of other public agencies. Despite repeated concerns about Rudakubana's taste of violence, there was only ever limited intervention. The government now says several opportunities were missed to stop him turning his dark obsessions into a reality. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer said the state had failed. No shit, Sherlock. I'm not going to turn this into a political rant, but I'm not a fan of Keir Starmer. This is what we know about his journey to becoming a killer and whether it could have been prevented. The answer is yes, it could have been prevented. Early warning signs. The first serious signs Rudakubana was capable of inflicting harm date back to when he was in Year 9 at Range High School in Formby, Merseyside. At the age of 11, he appeared in the BBC Children in Need campaign video, which he had been put forward for by an acting casting agency. So up to the age of 11, he seemed to be normal. So what happened? Over his adolescence, Rudakubana began to exhibit anger issues and a propensity for violence. Fellow pupils remember him being obsessed with figures such as Adolf Hitler and Genghis Khan. Which, I mean, come on, right? If he's got an interest in history, okay, we'll give him that. But it's more than that. His time at Range High School ended in October 2019 when he took a knife into school. It would later emerge, he told the Childline call centre that he did so because he experienced racist bullying. All right, so he's bullied. He takes a knife into school. All right, okay. Rudakubana did not use the knife on that occasion, but the incident was serious enough that he was permanently expelled from the school. He returned to school about 2 months later with a hockey stick and attacked a child with it. He had to be restrained by staff. From the point at which he was thrown out of Range High School, Rudakubana largely fell out of the formal education system. Local health workers determined he had an autism spectrum disorder, and he was later enrolled in 2 other schools for children with special needs, the Acorn School and the Pressfields High School and Specialist College. He attended sixth form at the latter only for a few days and was largely dealt with by home visits. The school sometimes requested police accompany teachers when visiting his home. Such were the concerns about his violent behaviour. Lancashire Child Safeguarding Partnership said Rudakubana failed to integrate into education after his exclusion from Range High School, a situation exacerbated by the pandemic. His attendance, they say, was limited. Basically, he didn't go, which is probably a good thing because it was safer for everybody. And around the same time, it was noted Rudakubana experienced anxiety, which prevented him from leaving his home. Well, I wish that anxiety had been full-on agoraphobia, and then we wouldn't be here today, would we? During the years in which he stopped attending school, several local agencies have various levels of contact with him. He was convicted of assault and referred to the Youth Justice Service after the incident when he took the knife into school. He completed rehabilitation. Rehabilitation activities aimed at young offenders who had pled guilty to a first offence. However, Lancashire Constabulary had several further interactions with the teenager between October 2019 and May 2022, including four calls from his home address relating to concerns about his behaviour. So his parents were calling him in. His parents couldn't handle him. On each occasion, officers made contact with MASH, a local grouping of agencies tasked with overseeing vulnerable people in the area. I've no idea what MASH stands for. I'm in the area. I've no idea what MASH stands for. Children's Social Care carried out an initial assessment into Rudakubana, which found social work support was not required. They were probably too scared of him. It recommended early help, which covers forms of less intensive intervention. Give him a hug. Give him a hug. Yeah, his parents were Christians, but he was, I don't know what he was. I don't know whether he thought he was a Muslim, whether he thought he was some kind of freedom fighter. I have no idea what he thought, but his parents attended church, Christian church. Contact was made with Rudakubana and his family. They were offered guidance on his emotional well-being and behaviours. Give him a hug. He had involvement with local mental health services, but stopped engaging in February 2023. We can't force him to go to mental health services. A spokesperson representing local agencies said his participation and engagement remained a challenge throughout the period, despite the efforts of professionals to engage with him. An independent review into whether more could have been done to intervene is underway. Rudakubana's twisted interest in violence began to emerge both before and after the attack in Southport on 29th of July 2024. It came to the attention of the government's anti-extremism prevent programme because he had expressed an interest in school shootings, the London Bridge attack, the IRA, MI5 and the Middle East. That's very broad-ranging. I mean, those things themselves don't flag up a problem for me. If he's got an interest in crime, if he's got an interest in, the IRA, like the Irish Republican Army, he's got an interest in MI5, why? I don't know. That's the UK Secret Service, and the Middle East. Why? He was referred to Prevent 3 times between 2019 and 2021 over concerns about his interest in violence. Now, listen, Prevent, I'm sure they mean well. When I used to work at a university, I had to do Prevent training every year. Do you know what Prevent training entailed? Watching a video and then answering some questions about it. Except you could put the video on, like it knew if you didn't watch the video and you just tried to answer the questions, it wouldn't let you answer the questions without watching the video. So what I used to do is put the video on, go and make a brew, go and do something else, come back when it had finished and then answer the questions, because the questions were so obvious. It was obvious what the right answer was. That's what my Prevent training year on year entailed. It's ridiculous. I'm sure they mean well, however. The full scale of his obsessions became clearer after the attack when his home and digital devices were searched. Police found his devices contained images from conflicts in Gaza, Ukraine, Sudan, and Korea. So look, he's got an interest in current affairs in worldwide, as well as copious academic material relating to war and genocide. His search history revealed an interest in Nazi Germany, ethnic violence in Somalia and Rwanda, and slavery. Okay. Detectives also found an American academic study of an Al-Qaeda training document, which had been downloaded at least twice in 2021. Oh, okay, so it wasn't the actual training document, it was an American study of an Al-Qaeda training document. Okay. All right. These twisted interests provide the backdrop of that horror that would unfold on 29th of July. On 7th of July, an advert was posted on Instagram advertising a Taylor Swift-themed dance workshop for young children. It sold out in 11 days. The class got underway at 10, and photos taken at the scene, reviewed by police, show 26 children laughing and playing at the start of the school holidays. At 11:10, Rudakubana left his home. His face was obscured by a hood and a surgical mask. He was carrying a 20-centimetre, so what's that, about 8 inches, long kitchen knife purchased on Amazon on 13th of July. So he purchased this kitchen knife, especially for the crime. I assumed he just got it from home. Police say he used encryption software to conceal his identity when he bought it. Listen, I bought a kitchen knife and I had to sign for it. But I bought a kitchen knife from Amazon, and they couldn't just leave it at my door. They couldn't just post it through my letterbox, I had to sign for it. So why didn't he have to sign for it? Why did no one have to sign for it? That's meant to be the law. That if you buy anything with a blade longer than 3 inches, it's illegal to carry it out in public, like brandishing it. So you can take like a 2.9 inch blade out, and that's fine. Anyhow, I had to sign for it. Sign that I was an adult. I was responsible and stuff. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has called it a disgrace that a teenager with a history of violence was able to easily acquire the blade. Yeah. Amazon says it launched an urgent investigation. Yes. Yes. Why did I have to sign for a kitchen knife that I use for chopping vegetables? And he didn't. Shortly before leaving the house, Rudakubana deleted his IP address from his tablet, one of several pieces of evidence uncovered by police that revealed he took efforts to conceal his online movements. He also searched for material on the stabbing of a bishop in Sydney in April 2024. Taxi picked him up at 11:30, stayed silent through the journey, left the car without paying, made his way to a garage. The driver followed him and there was a confrontation. When the garage owner told him to pay for his ride, Rudakubana replied, "What are you going to do about it?" I'd have smacked him in the face right there. That's what I would have done about it. But then again, that's just me. He then went inside the dance studio and began to stab at Whaley's target. The most vulnerable people in society, young children, appeared to have been chosen to create the maximum horror and disgust. 6-year-old BB King, 7-year-old Elsie Dot Stankham, and 9-year-old Alice Della Silva Aguilar tried to kill others by stabbing them in the back as they fled. By 11:59, he had been arrested but said nothing when formally questioned. All right, let's go to court. So this is the court feed. So when did we start? We actually started late. Okay, so 11:24, legal team assembling, families come in. So the prosecution team is led by Deanna Here, QC. Defence team led by Stan Rees, QC. And the judge presiding is Mr. Justice Goose. All right. Hearing is currently running 45 minutes behind schedule. It was meant to start at 11. Security around the court has been exceptionally high to get into the court and blah, blah, blah. Axel Rudakubana is in court with his head bowed. Okay. Grey sweatshirt and trousers, wearing a surgical mask, sitting with his head bowed. Then, 11:55, Rudakubana taken for medical treatment in the early hours. We can report that Rudakubana was taken for medical treatment in the early hours of today, but as we've already mentioned, he's now in court to be sentenced. All right. So, had he tried to harm himself? I don't know. Prosecution explains how the hearing will work. All right. All right, we're getting to the meat and potatoes now. We have to read from the bottom up. All right. So, 12 o'clock. Prosecution tells the court. In summary, on 29th of July, the defendant carried out a premeditated, planned knife attack upon multiple victims, principally young girls, intending to kill them. 3 children were killed. As we know, attempted to kill 10 others, inflict a number of stab wounds. When his home was searched following his arrest, a number of weapons were recovered, including the biological toxin ricin, which the defendant had produced in his bedroom. So he'd made it himself in his bedroom. Great. All right. He told police he was glad the children had died. Look, for that reason alone, can we not make an exception to the death penalty rule? Like, we don't have the death penalty here in the UK. Can we not just make an exception, take him out the back and shoot him in the head? Can we not just do that? Why are we wasting resources on this lowlife, on this freak of nature? Why? Can we not just take him out back and shoot him in the head? I'll do it. I'm happy. I'm not going to feel any guilt or any remorse for this. Just give me a gun, load it up, and give me the gun. I'll do it. Take him out back, shoot him in the head. It's the kindest thing. Look, when a dog is rabid, when a dog is beyond help, what do? You put them to sleep. Just saying. All right. Deanna here, QC, leading the prosecution, now says that having researched atrocities committed by others, the evidence suggests Axel Rudakubana set out to emulate them on 29th of July. There's no evidence that he ascribed to any particular political or religious ideology. He wasn't fighting for a cause, which is why Prevent wasn't interested when he was reported to Prevent, because they're like an anti-extremism, like, I don't know, watchdog. Watchdog with no teeth. However, when he was referred to them, he wasn't considered a terrorist because he doesn't have a cause. He doesn't have an ideology. He doesn't have he's just a freak of nature. He's just a psychopath. Some people are just born bad. As a psychologist, I'm telling you, some people are just born bad. I'm sorry. That's not a popular view in psychology. It's not, but it's true. Some people are just born bad. They are wired wrong. Thank you, Paper Chaser, for being a member for 27 months. I will go. I'll go around the back. If they give me a weapon, I'll go around the back and I'll sort it. There's no evidence he ascribed to an ideology. He wasn't fighting for a cause. His only purpose was to kill, and he targeted the youngest, most vulnerable, in order to spread the greatest level of fear and outrage, which he succeeded in doing. While under arrest at the police station, Rudakubana was heard to say, "It's a good thing those children are dead. I'm so glad, so happy." All right. Rudakubana now shouts in the courtroom, "I need a paramedic because I feel ill." Mr. Justice Goose says Rudakubana has been seen by medical practitioners this morning and is fit to attend, adding, "I want this hearing to continue." Stan Rees, Rudakubana's lawyer, tells the court that those at prison were concerned about his well-being last night and that the defendant hadn't eaten or drunk for some time. Oh, boo-hoo! He's on hunger strike. Well, leave him to it. Lock him in a room and leave him to it. I'm sorry. I'm not going to hug this guy. He's not redeemable. He's born bad. He's the rabid dog that no dog trainer is going to be able to fix. And I say this as someone who trains dogs. I've had dogs all my life. Just occasionally, there is one that is not fixable. Some dogs are born bad. You know, usually it's the human's fault, but just occasionally one is born bad. And it's the same with humans. I assume it's the same with every species, right? You know, brain wiring and all that, it's all very complicated. Sometimes it goes wrong. Some people are just born bad. Rees says he's spoken to Rudakubana this morning and said he was well enough, but he thinks he might have deteriorated and will take instructions. He goes to the doc to speak with the defendant. Rees tells the court that his client is complaining of chest pain and wants to see a paramedic. Maybe the chest pain is your heart actually in your chest feeling some kind of empathy. It might be that you're feeling sorry for what you did, but you can't recognize that as an emotion. I don't know. The judge says he's going to continue and there will be a break later. Good on him. I can't continue with this, Rudakubana shouts. Here on the prosecution team tries to carry on speaking, but he is shouting above her. My chest is hurting. The judge replies, shouting from the dock is not going to make this happen any quicker. If you remain quiet, you will be able to see someone. I'm not going to remain quiet. I am in pain, he said. I bet the children that he stabbed in July of 2024 were also in pain. Did you stop? Did you think about them? No. Mr. Justice Goose says, you've chosen this moment to say this. These proceedings are being conducted under my control, Mr. Rudakubana. Do you understand? Not yours. Good on him. A judge that actually has balls. Good on him. As Rudakubana continues to yell, the judge asks security to use force. He is then taken out of the dock to a side room. Dear God. So, Prosecutor continues to open with the facts of the case. He's interrupting. He's disrupting proceedings because he doesn't want people to hear all of his bad deeds. That's it. That's it. That's all. She explains 7th of July, Leanne Lucas posted an advert on Taylor Swift yoga and dance workshop on Instagram. All right, so we know about the event. All right, Rudakubana lived at 10 Old School Close Banks, about 5 miles away from the Heart Space with his parents. At about 11:10, he left his address on foot. We've seen him getting into a taxi, and we know what happened when he got there. 20 centimetre blade kitchen knife. Okay, it was one of 2 identical knives he purchased from Amazon on the 13th of July, taking steps to hide his ID when he did so using VPN. All right. Evidence obtained from his laptop computer shows that shortly before leaving, he deleted his internet browsing history. Not good enough. Thinking you're clever. Thinking you're not going to get caught. All right. Cool. So just for those waiting for the live sentencing, I do have it up. So I'll hear it once it goes live. I do have it up. All right, back to this. So, all right. So I used a search on Twitter for Mary Emanuel stabbing. The same search term entered by a police officer during this investigation found it led to posts containing footage of the stabbing of Bishop Emmanuel and 5 others during a sermon at a church in Sydney in April 2024. So he's looking for how to do it, isn't he? He's looking for how to do it. The defendant then booked a taxi. All right, we know that. Taxi was fitted with a dash cam. The footage shows that the defendant remained silent during the journey. But upon the arrival at Hart Street, he asked the driver to direct him to 34A before leaving the vehicle without paying, prompting the driver to follow him, making him repeated requests for payments which were ignored. Consequently, look, I guess that taxi drivers are limited in what they can do if someone refuses to pay. You know, I'll probably punch him in his face. Is going to result in the police and result in him losing his taxi license and probably a charge for assault. I get it. Consequently, there was dashcam footage of his subsequent movements. Rudakubana initially walked towards Master's Vehicle Body Repairs located next door. His owner, Colin Parry, who was interviewed, who confronted him, who actually confronted him, was outside speaking to a customer. He told the defendant he needed to pay the taxi driver, but the defendant responded saying, "What are you going to do about it?" He then turned around to make his way next door. Okay. Without saying a word, he grabbed the child nearest to him from behind and pulled his arm around her. At first, Leanne Lucas thought he was there to collect her, but he then moved on to a second child and then a third, Alice de la Silva Aguilar. She describes how the defendant moved quickly through the room and didn't say anything. It was only when he reached her and she felt a knife go into her back that Leanne Lucas realised he was armed and stabbing them. Well, were they not crying? Did she not see any blood? I guess it all happened very quickly. I guess this wasn't, it wasn't time for her to register. If he's just moving one on one, it's, it's seconds, isn't it? So you've got that confusion, you've got that what on earth's happening, and then you realise. CCTV shows children fleeing dance studio. The instructor recalls children running down the stairs and that she followed them into the car park, calling 999 as she did so. Once outside, she told them to run away, run away. One of the girls ran towards the toilet on the landing at the top of the stairs. Fellow teacher Heidi Liddell followed her inside, locked the door and braced her foot against it. She told the girl to remain very quiet and not make a sound. So that little girl and her teacher saved themselves. When she heard voices outside the toilet door crying for the defendant to stop, she realised that not all the children had managed to escape. Her mother was waiting to collect her daughter. She was sitting in her car in the car park when she heard screaming and saw people running from the building. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? She managed to grab her daughter and get her into the car. 3 other children also got into her vehicle. Alistair Da Silva collapsed by the side of the vehicle, badly injured. At 11:46, CCTV footage showed a child trying to leave the building only to be pulled back inside by the defendant. She was subsequently seen stumbling from the building and collapsing outside. Can you imagine? These are little kids. These are like 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. These are little kids. The first day of the school holidays, going to do some, dancing and yoga to Taylor Swift. They were making friendship bracelets, stuff like that. Oh dear. Jonathan Hayes, who worked in an office across the landing from the dance studio, heard screaming. When he looked out of the window, he saw some children running from the car park. When a colleague shouted that a child was bleeding, Hayes went to try and help. As he walked onto the landing, however, he saw the body of a child lying motionless on the floor. It is likely to have been BB King. Crouching over her was the defendant, who then began to approach him, following him into his office as he retreated. She goes on, the defendant swiped at him with a knife, which he tried to grab. Hayes was stabbed in the leg during the confrontation and subsequently fell to the ground. All right, we got distressing details, if it wasn't distressing enough. All right. So Marcin Tyjon and Joel Verity, maybe, were driving along Hart Street when they saw a group of children running across the road and a woman, Leanne Lucas, covered in blood. She was screaming that someone was stabbing the kids. Verity could see that she was injured and that there was a child lying on the ground further along the road. He picked up Alice Da Silva Aguilar and took her out into the street. Marcin Tyjon then tried to help her, administering CPR on the instruction of a 999 operator. Verity returned and ran back into the building and up the stairs, but retreated when he saw the defendant pacing on the landing holding a large knife. An officer arrived at 11:57 to find a large crowd of people in a state of panic. Verity entered the premises, accompanied by another officer who had his taser drawn. At the top of the stairs, they found the defendant standing over the body of BB King, who had visible and severe stab injuries. He was holding a large bloody kitchen knife, which he dropped when told to do so. Verity, who had followed the police into the building, picked up BB King and carried her out of the building, screaming as he did so. Soon afterwards, Heidi Liddell and another person were found hiding, so it was the child, in the toilet, crying with fear and relief. They were escorted from the building. Here pauses to give those who wish to do so the chance to leave the court, as evidence is about to be presented, which she says may be distressing. The court is first shown a CCTV screenshot of Rudakubana indicating what he was wearing that day, a green hoodie and face mask. The dashcam footage of the taxi that drove Axel Rudakubana to the dance studio shows him trying to get into the ground floor through a locked door, then finds an adjacent open doorway to the stairwell leading to the room where the children were and walks up the stairs. CCTV shows children fleeing from the building. Seconds later, very loud screams can be heard. Footage shows one girl leaving the building and being pulled back. She survived. Imagine the trauma that she lives with, though. Imagine that. The court is again pausing so that children can leave amid a warning that we will see images of wounded children, including Alice Da Silva Aguilar. Sobs can be heard in the courtroom as CCTV clips continue to be shown. A further clip shows another child staggering in the street before she collapses. She is helped by a member of the public and survived the attack. The court is also presented with CCTV and body cam footage of the first police officer arriving on the scene. Shouts of "taser, taser" can be heard on the video. Body-worn video footage shows chaotic scenes as officers decide what to do. Blood can be seen on the stairwell as well as children lying on the landing. Imagine being one of the police officers. You know, these are just beat bobbies. They're not trained, tactical people like the first responders. You know, the basic police trained. But imagine, yes, they can deal with the offender, but imagine seeing all of those children and just that blind panic. Imagine that. Body-worn video footage shows chaotic scenes as officers decide what to do. Blood can be seen on the stairwell as well as children lying on the landing. In the footage, the officers confront Rudakubana, who is standing over BB King. He is then handcuffed. Court is now being shown a video of Heidi Little, an adult who was in the dance class, and the girl who was with her in the bathroom inside the dance studio as police rescue them. Officers shout police when officer says Jesus as they enter the room where the stabbing took place. Loud crying could be heard on the video. Overall, 13 people were stabbed and 3 killed by Axel Rudakubana. We're now being given details of the severe injuries people suffered. Several people have run out of the public gallery. The families of the children have asked not to report the graphic nature of their injuries. Okay. All right. So they're glossing over. But Sankum injuries were so severe that she could not have been saved, no matter how quickly paramedics arrived. BB King was found on the landing, and she had some defensive injuries, so she tried to fight. In the opinion of the pathologist, BB's injuries were untreatable. However, quickly emergency help arrived. We now hear that Alice, age 9, who died from her injuries that morning after the attack, she managed to get out of the building alive. She was assessed by a paramedic outside the scene. She was taken to hospital. Despite emergency surgery, her injuries were too serious to survive, and she was pronounced dead at 1:20 that following morning. I remember that. The court is now hearing about the injuries to the children who survived. These children cannot be identified due to a court order. All girls, some as young as 7, some who were in life-threatening condition after the attack but survived. So, look, they've got life-changing physical injuries, but can you imagine the psychological scarring? Can you imagine that? Still waiting for the live stream to start in the background, by the way. It's on, it's live, just waiting for sound, and then we'll go to it. Before taking a break, the court hears how dance instructor Leanne Lucas was stabbed 5 times. She was taken to hospital in life-threatening condition but survived. Court breaks for lunch. Lunch is now taking a break and will resume at 1400 hours, which for those not familiar with military time is 2 p.m. It's now 2:04. We'll bring you a roundup of what we've heard so far today shortly. Let's see if they've done the roundup. All right, we've got a roundup. What we heard. So this is the summary. All right, over the last hour, Liverpool Crown Court has been hearing details of the attack in Southport on 29th of July, which Axel Rudakubana killed 3 children and left others severely injured. Here's a quick summary of what we learned. The attack last year was premeditated, planned with multiple victims. 3 children were killed, 10 others were left with a number of stab wounds. When under arrest, Axel Rudakubana told the police he was glad children had died, describing it as a good thing. It'd be a good thing if you die, Axel. I hope your chest pains are real. I hope you have a heart attack. I hope nobody helps you. I hope you're just left to die in a hole somewhere. That'd be great. If the dude ain't eating and drinking, just leave him to it. Do you know what they used to do in medieval times in the Tower of London when, they wanted someone gone? You know what they used to do? Sometimes they'd take them out and hang them. Sometimes they'd hang, draw, and quarter them. Sometimes, and I think this is a particularly brutal way to die, they would put them in a room and they would brick up the doorway. They just brick up the doorway. So you're going to die slowly and painfully. on your own. Could we not just bring back that just for this person? You know, if he don't want to eat and drink. All right. Oh, we got an update here. All right, we'll read that in a minute. Okay. Prosecution explained dance instructor Leanne Lucas did not initially realise Rudakubana was armed. Court heard how he moved quickly through the room without saying anything. CCTV footage shows one child trying to leave the building and being pulled back inside by the defendant. The court also saw body-worn footage from officers at the scene. Injuries of Elsie Dot, Stankham and BB King, 2 of the 3 girls killed, were too severe to be treatable, regardless of how quickly help arrived. The courtroom was briefly interrupted at the start of the hearing when Rudakubana shouted that he was ill. Judge Mr. Justice Goose said the defendant was fit to attend. Minutes before the hearing began, we learned that Rudakubana had been taken for medical treatment in the early hours of the morning. All right, a reminder of the terror charges Rudakubana pled guilty to. While we wait for court to resume, it's worth remembering that as well as pleading guilty to 3 counts of murder and 10 counts of attempted murder, Axel Rudakubana had also pled guilty to 2 terror-related offences. On Monday, he admitted to producing the biological toxin ricin on or before the 29th of July. Ricin is a highly toxic poison naturally derived from castor oil plants. So he's made his own ricin. Made his own ricin. What was he planning to do with that? Listen, this is 20 miles away from my house. I want to know what he was planning to do with that. He also pled guilty to possession of terrorist material, namely a PDF file entitled Military Studies in the Jihad Against the Tyrants, the Al-Qaeda Training Manual, which he had between 29th of August 2021 and 30th of July 2024. Both the ricin and the study of the training manual were found as part of searches of Rudakubana's house in the Lancashire village of Banks after the stabbings. No trace of the substance was found at the scene of the stabbings. So he was planning to probably use that at a later date. Police said the poison they did discover presented a low risk to the public. Oh, so he probably not done it properly. Made his own ricin in his bedroom. All right, I feel a bit more comfortable. But how many more? Listen, how many more Axel Rudakubanas are out there who are failed by the system? You know, because they don't want mental health care, so you can't force them to do that unless they're sectionable under the Mental Health Act. They don't fit into the prescribed rules to be, you know, actionable by the Prevent, the watchdog with no teeth. So they fall through the cracks. Where do we go? His parents were calling the police on him. So what more can we do? What more can we do? How many more Axel Rudakubanas out there who were not affiliated with any terrorist organisation? I'm pretty sure Al-Qaeda don't want this guy. I'm pretty sure Al-Qaeda would say no if this guy tried to sign up. This guy is too messed up. This guy is born bad. He's just born bad. He's a psychopath. He's born bad. And if you're not affiliated with any ideology or any group or anything like that, then you're not preventable by Prevent, the watchdog with no teeth. So where do you go? Where do we go? So the government are now going to have a plan and blah, 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 blah. All right, cool. These details and charges so far have not been mentioned in today's sentencing hearing. Okay. 57,000 people viewing this.
Seen and heard. My correspondent Jane McCubbin has spent some time in Southport speaking to the community there and just finding out from them how they are dealing in the aftermath of this horrific attack.
Can you hear this, by the way? Can you hear that?
3 young victims will never be forgotten here in Southport. life is returning to normal for many in this small town, but for some it is changed forever.
What on earth?
People stopped doing things. I think that was what it was. You know how it's stuff when you start to laugh, when you start to smile, when you know what these families are and will always, you know, stuff be experiencing. And I think that's it. It's a little bit of respect.
This atrocity has hit us so hard. But it has brought out the best of us.
Beyond today's sentencing, people know there will be a reckoning about where else the blame should lie.
Yeah, I just feel that we can't keep up with the internet.
I mean, I think it's desperately difficult for people in social services because they get the blame for it, but you can't be everywhere.
The owner of Southport's Pleasureland is desperate for normality.
The impact on the town has been devastating. From within 1 hour of it happening, a lady came to the gate, her husband was a policeman saying, close the gate, close the gate. Within 1 other hour, we had people cancelling. And that's the same for everything in the town, okay?
While Norman Wallace has huge sympathy for the victims, his business needs visitors to return. It's been called Southport Pleasureland since the 1920s, but today he is rebranding.
From this day is Adventure Coast.
And the impetus for this?
Listen, I'm sorry. Southport is lovely. I like Southport. Right, it's my nearest seaside town. It's past its heyday. Like, you can rebrand Pleasureland as much as you want, right? But quite frankly, it's a bit shit. So, I don't know what to tell you. But, hey.
Has been these awful events.
That's drawn a line in the sand. We've got to draw another line in the sand now and move forward. The media keeps saying the bad word that I won't say.
What
Southport's
word?
a great place.
What word?
Stabbing. Southport's a great place. We do need to let them, we need to let them grieve, and we need to move on as a town.
Many businesses, like Graham's barbershop, were already struggling before the atrocity.
You're just banging your head against the wall.
And many like him have struggled more since.
They had a meeting like how to get Southport back on track after this incident and all this, but they never had any solutions whatsoever. We've got no money, you're not getting no help, get on with it yourself.
There's very real anger here towards the killer, but also authorities.
I had a policeman come in and telling me that they'd been to see this lad before, so it should have been dealt with. But because we've got the nonsense woke stuff, what we've got now, they won't go near them.
You sympathised with some of the rioters?
Not damaging stuff, but in principle, you say anything, you're a far right or something, they probably have me carted off. I'm a far right. I'm not. We're normal people. Like, I work 6 days a week, but I don't earn a 6 day a week income. So what's that about?
Well, I don't know. You're confusing, I don't know, several issues there. I don't know what to tell you. Look, I understand the anger. I do. I understand the anger. The problem I had with the riots last year were the fact that they were just damaging stuff. They were setting fire to stuff. The vast majority of people who were out there had no interest in what was going on politically or even the real issues behind this. They were there just to cause a problem. They were there just to go out and have fun and wreck some stuff, right? Attacking police dogs, I'm sorry, right? Stabbing police dogs, you've lost me. You've just lost me if you do that kind of absolute crap. You've lost me. I understand people are angry. I get it. I understand people are angry. But Axel Rudakubana was born in Britain. The problem with Axel Rudakubana is that he was born bad. If Axel Rudakubana had been called, I don't know, Joe Bloggs, or, I don't know, Henry Jones, there wouldn't have been the riots. It would have been, oh, look at this absolute, you know, fruitcake here. Look at him. Look at that psychopath. Lock him up forever. Rightly so. But there wouldn't have been riots. There wouldn't have been all of this, you know, he's a come over on a boat and he's a illegal immigrant and all of that. There would have been none of that if his name had been Henry Jones or Joe Bloggs or, I don't know, Neil Smith or, you know, with white skin. It wouldn't have been that, would it? But the issues would have been the same. Some people are just born bad. So when I say how many other Axel Rudakubanas are out there, I'm not just talking about people with African sounding names or that practice Islam or that are, I don't know, of any other cultural heritage. I'm talking across the board. How many people, how many humans are born bad who have fallen through the cracks? How many more Axel Rudakubanas are out there? Thousands are out there. Yeah, they are. Thousands are out there. But some of them are called Neil Smith. Some of them are called Henry Jones. Some of them are called Joe Bloggs with white skin. Therefore, people are interested in them. The people who have got all the anger towards Axel Rudakubana are angry because he's got brown skin and he's got a non-British sounding name. That's why they're angry. And I'm sorry, Axel Rudakubana could have been anybody. Axel Rudakubana could be anybody who was born bad. And people are born bad throughout the entire world. The question is, what do we do with those people? And thankfully, they are, you know, the true psychopaths are thankfully pretty rare. Like the true psychopaths who have absolutely zero empathy. They are, but they're there. They're out there. They're out there. All right, we're waiting for court. We're waiting for court to start. Now, it did start 45 minutes late this morning. So they're probably dealing with Rudakubana's, you know, health problems. He's probably had to go and sit him in a safe space or something. You know, give him a hug. All right. Can we move this forward? No, it's not going to let me move it forward because it's live. All right. Oh, all right, here we go. Court hearing resumes. Mr. Justice Goose, the judge in this case, has re-entered court. He says that Axel Rudakubana has been seen again and is fit to come into court. At that moment, he has indicated he is willing to come in without disrupting proceedings. Do you know what? Gag him. Bring him in a gag so we can't disrupt. The judge adds that if Rudakubana does disrupt things, he'll be removed again, but that he is expected to be in the dock at the point of sentence. Axel Rudakubana has re-entered the dock. Okay. So are we ready for sentencing? Or what? At what point are they going to turn the live stream on? 4 stabbed outside Asda Croydon today. Really? Really? You know, in the US, it's all like shootings, isn't it? And oh dear me, that school shooting in Tennessee. Oh, I've been watching some stuff on that, and it's heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking, totally heartbreaking. In this country, we do have a firearms problem. It's not true that all guns are banned here in the UK. It is not true. You can get a gun in the UK. There are handguns you can't get. But there's a bunch of guns you can get with a license. And there are some, like air rifles and stuff, that you can get without a license. But we don't have what we have is a problem with knife crime. We've had a problem with knife crime for a very, very long time. Don't forget Portsmouth last night. Why? What happened in Portsmouth? Is this like Daryl Brooks? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think his parents were trying. His parents called the cops on him 4 times. Oh, Plymouth. What happened in Plymouth? All right. So we're hearing more now from the prosecutor. She tells the court about remarks a defendant made to police after being brought into custody following the attack. We previously heard he had said it's a good thing those children are dead. I'm glad, I'm so happy. Now we're hearing Rudakubana said, I don't care. I'm feeling neutral. Literally, such a good thing those kids are dead. 6 years old, so happy. 6 years old, it's a good thing they are dead. Yeah. He's been taken out of court a second time. This is BBC News, breaking news. So they'll put that up. They'll put that up. Let's have Sky as well. Let's where's Sky News? Sky.
Container which contained what she described as a pulp-like material which they suspected could be the toxin ricin.
Southport killer taken out of court a second time.
The search was halted until protective gear and equipment was made available and was brought in. The prosecutor said when the search resumed, a number of items were recovered from his bedroom. They were examined by an expert in chemical and biological warfare agents. He concluded that the Tupperware container did indeed contain actively toxic ricin pulp, which had been produced from castor beans using equipment found in the defendant's bedroom. It was at this point that Rudakubana started shouting again, saying that he needed to see a paramedic. I feel ill.
I'll tell you what we should do. We should feed him the pulp. Doing the pulp is only the first step in making something that is biologically so toxic you're gonna kill people. But I hope they save that Tupperware container of the pulp of castor beans and feed it to him. Force feed it to him. Let's do that.
Well, the charge of possessing ricin wasn't brought under the terror legislation, but ricin is, of course, something that people will, automatically associate with terror attacks. I mean, we had a famous case some years ago of the production of ricin.
All right, okay. Let's see what BBC have written here. All right. Ricin naturally occurring toxic by ingestion, injection, and inhalation. Adding that the symptoms vary according to the means of exposure, but will potentially result in death as a result of multi-organ failure and/or acute respiratory distress. Here added, there's no antidote for ricin poisoning, and only a small amount of it may be deadly. Yeah, you've got to produce it proper though. Like, he's done the first step. So they've not got yet that he's been taken out. Right, we'll go back to Sky.
Terror incidents because of that definition and the authorities continue to say this, that his motivation they can't decide what exactly his motivation was, and they can't find any evidence that he was fighting a cause, a political cause or an ideological cause. And that means, in the eyes of the law, the authorities insist it wasn't a terrorist incident.
Martin, there has just been some more information from our colleagues about the manual that was found. I'll just let you read that, and I'll just bring those watching up to speed with what's happened on court since they came back from that lunch break. Rudakubana, you'll be aware, was removed from court this morning after calling for a paramedic and disrupting court proceedings. It was around 15 or 20 minutes or so into the hearing. The judge asked for him to be removed and assessed by a medical professional. He was deemed fit and well to go back into the courtroom after the lunch break. In fact, he was willing and said he wanted to go back into the courtroom, but shortly after proceedings got underway again, he once again interrupted proceedings and started shouting. This happening within the last 5 minutes. He began to shout for a second time. He started by sitting quietly for a short period after the lunch break with his head lowered. He then shouted, "Judge, I feel really ill. I need to be seen by a paramedic." When there was no response, Rudakubana shouted, "Judge, judge, judge, I need to be seen by a paramedic." This is from our colleagues who are inside the courtroom for the Press Association. Mr. Justice Goose asked dock officers to once again remove Rudakubana. He said he has been seen by 2 teams of paramedics, both of whom agreed he is fit. That was at around 20 past 2, so just a few minutes ago. Rudakubana being removed from court for a second time. The judge has already said he wants him back in the courtroom for...
Listen. Why can we not bring him in Hannibal Lecter style? Like, just bring the guy in, force him to sit there, just restrain him, gag him, and force him to be there. The law is too soft. The law is too soft. I mean, look, the judge is doing everything he can. The judge is constrained. You know, the judge can order the use of force. If he starts, you know, getting physical, or he doesn't want to, you know, he doesn't want to leave, they can use force. But it has to be proportional. So they can't, legally, they can't bring him in a gag. I think there has to be some, you know, special measures. When somebody is so bad, when somebody has committed something so atrocious, somebody who is glad that children have died, and someone who has zero remorse, there surely has to be some kind of special measure. And if this guy doesn't get a whole life order, I'm going to be very upset. However, because he was only 17 at the time that the crimes were committed, there's been a lot of talk about it's not be possible under British law to send him to prison forever. A whole life order isn't there on the statute books for a minor, someone under the age of 18. However, is there a special measure that can be made? Because this dude was nearly 18 when this happened. And I just cannot, I absolutely cannot think that this guy, you know, let's say he's given 30 years before the possibility of parole. He's only 18 now, so he's got, going to be what, 48? And he has the potential to be walking free. I'm sorry, I'm not happy with that. Is there any proof he was 17? Yeah, they'll have his birth certificate. Don't we have the death penalty? Sadly not, no. We don't have the death penalty. And it's very rare that murderers get a whole life order, meaning life with no possibility of parole. We call it a whole life order here in the UK, but life without the possibility of parole. It's rare. You have to be like a serial killer. So the Yorkshire Ripper, Peter Sutcliffe, he got a whole life order. But the thing is, because he was 17, the legal eagles have said that it's not possible for the judge to give him a whole life order. But I'm sure there has to be some kind of special measure. I'm sure there has to be. Because, you see, if he's, let's say he's given 30 years before the possibility of parole. Once those 30 years are up, he may not get parole. You know, if he's deemed still a threat, he won't get parole. But it means that the families have to have all this raked up again. I know it's, 30 years in the future. I probably won't be here. You may not be here. But, members of Alice, Elsie and BB's families might be here. Their siblings might still be here. The parents might still be here. And they have to have it all raked up again. And the children who survived are only going to be in their early 40s. They're going to have it all raked up again. There are special circumstances for this. Yeah. Special circumstances. And I'm hoping the judge deems this a special circumstance. Is he schizophrenic in the early stage? Not that has come out. No, he was diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder when he was in his early teens, and he's also been diagnosed with anxiety. So give him a safe space and give him a hug. There's something seriously wrong with this dude. This is not autistic behavior. This is not somebody suffering from anxiety. I'm sorry, it's not. It's not. Oh, she looks important. Let's listen to her.
This is a 4 to 6 week trial condensed into a day. What have you made of what we've heard so far?
This is, Sarah Jane, good afternoon. This is an absolutely horrific series of offences. It is totally and utterly unforgivable, and my heart goes out to the family and the...
Okay, yeah, it's unforgivable. But what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? Is this guy going to get a whole life order? I don't want the victims' families and those victims themselves that survived, who will only be in their early 40s, if he's given, let's say, for example, 30 years, where they are informed as victims that this dude is, eligible for parole. And what if he's let out? What if he manages to convince a parole board, who sometimes make wrong decisions, let's just say? I know a lot of psychologists who work in UK prisons. I'm just saying that. I'm not saying anything else. They sometimes make wrong decisions, and people are let out and they reoffend. This dude, right? This dude is the most extreme of the extreme of the extreme. Someone who is glad that children have died at their hand, in my opinion, is not capable of rehabilitation. I don't care that he's only 18. He's not capable of rehabilitation. And he should not be let out. And the victims and the victims' families should not be put in the position that in years to come, they are scared that this dude is going to get probation. They're going to be scared he's going to come after him again. Whether that's a valid concern or not. It's valid to them. But I believe this guy is going to be a lifelong threat to other people's lives. That's why I think, why I'm a UK taxpayer. Do I want my tax pounds to be spent housing this guy for 30 years, 40 years, or even for the rest of his life, if the judge does the right thing and gives him a sentence of life without the possibility of parole? My UK tax pounds are going to be spent on him. I don't want that. I'm sorry, I don't want that. So take him round the back and put a bullet in his head. It's humane. Listen, that's way more humane than what he did to Elsie and BB and Alice and the others who can't be named because, they are minors. Leanne Lucas, who was stabbed. The other guy who was stabbed, that he's being done for attempted murder of. Like, imagine the pain, imagine the horror. Putting a bullet in someone's head is way more humane than what he did. It's more humane, actually, than the lethal injection. Because the way they do the lethal injection, I'm sorry, you take too long. Like, when you put a dog to sleep, the dog dies within seconds. I mean, literally, they just go to sleep. They just go to sleep and the heart just stops and that's it. I don't know why there's this big palaver over a lethal injection, like in the States, in America, where they have a lethal injection. I don't know why there's this big palaver over it. But put a bullet in his brain. It's instant death. Dear God. All right, let's see what else is going on in court here. We've got an update on BBC. All right. All right, okay. So Rudakubana begins yelling. This is from a few minutes ago. I need to be seen by a paramedic. I feel ill. The judge has had him removed again, saying the court is aware Rudakubana has been seen by 2 teams of paramedics who deem that he is fit to attend. Okay. Although the evidence is clear ricin was produced by Rudakubana, there is no evidence that ricin was used either during the attack, at the heart space, or at any other time. She goes on to say a machete in a scabbard, so it's sheath, a set of arrows and a black holdall were also found in Rudakubana's bedroom when police searched his home. Well, a black holdall, so big bag, in his 30 years per victim. Yeah, that's a solution. That's a solution. Yeah, do the maximum for a minor, but do it consecutive sentences. That's the way around it. So he had a machete and a set of arrows. I don't think this guy would know how to use a bow and arrow. I don't think that he would know how to use a bow and arrow, unless he was doing archery classes. A kitchen knife identical to the one used in the stabbings was also found in the living room, where it appeared Rudakubana had been sleeping. Okay, so we've heard about the Al-Qaeda training manual. Prosecution outlines that the manual had been downloaded on 3 occasions in 2021. At the time Rudakubana went to the heart space, he was in possession of instructions in the manual on carrying out a knife attack with lethal force. So he was learning how to do it from the Al-Qaeda manual. The Al-Qaeda manual, I don't know. I'm not going to download it. It's probably illegal to download it. But I don't know whether it is or not. But this is an academic article talking about the Al-Qaeda. So I don't know what this article is. Anyhow, there's probably instructions in there on how to prepare biological weapons. So, all right. On his tablet devices, the police found multiple images of knives and machetes, which he searched for on various online retailers. He had sent emails to various retailers making inquiries about buying knives. Some of the emails asked whether deliveries could be made in plain packaging and revealed that Rudakubana had also tried to purchase a knife with a 20-centimetre blade on the 21st of June. But the order was cancelled when he failed to pay. So we've got searching stuff on numerous wars. In addition to violent images, including those of dead bodies, victims of torture, beheadings, cartoon depicting killing, violence and rape, art which insulted or mocked different religions, including Islam, Judaism and Christianity. So this is why they're saying he's not a terrorist, because he's not affiliating himself with any religious belief, however extreme and warped, you know, that religion has been made by extremists. He's a lone wolf, a very dangerous lone wolf that is not redeemable and needs to be put down. It's a very broad spread of materials which provides a window into the defendant's mind at the time. It shows that he was fascinated with violence of an extreme nature, that he had obtained information on killings and how to kill, and obtained weapons capable of killing. This evidence demonstrates that the stabbings on that day were premeditated and had been planned by the defendant for some time. When asked about Ricin and Al-Qaeda manual in the interview, he remains silent. The court next hears details about Rudakubana's childhood and background, including that he was born in Cardiff and moved to Southport with his family in 2013. In 2017, he became a pupil at the Range High School in Formby. On 4th of October 2019, he contacted Childline and asked, "What do I do if I want to kill somebody?" Maybe he was asking for help. Maybe that was a cry for help. Childline, for those that don't know, like, kids can ring up and, you know, get counselling. In the days that followed, he explained he hated someone at school who bullied him. He felt angry and wanted to kill them. A referral was made to the police, who visited the defendant. He confirmed that he had taken a knife to school and added he thought he would use it if he became angry. The school was also informed. By this time, the defendant had been temporarily excluded. This was made a permanent exclusion when he admitted to taking a knife into school on about 10 previous occasions. Referrals were made to Multi-Agency Safeguard Hub, or MASH, so that's what MASH stands for, and the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services, CAMS. But if you don't want to go, and there's probably like a 2-year waiting list for CAMS. There's a massive waiting list for CAMS. All right, let's listen to some more reporting from outside court here.
Rudakubana got out of the car and went back into the house. The prosecutor said it's unlikely to be a coincidence that this was the last day of term, with students due to leave the school premises at around 12:30, going off for the summer. The court may infer, said the prosecutor, that this was an earlier attempt to commit offences similar to the offences he was to carry out at the Heart Space, the dance school event, a week later.
We've now moved on to the victim impact statements inside the courtroom. The first statement coming from Leanne Lucas, the dance teacher who was injured in that attack. We heard part of her witness statement in court earlier on today, detailing how she was stabbed in the back, running away from Axel Rudakubana, and she managed to shout to the children who he chased to say, "Run." Just a warning that this will no doubt contain some upsetting detail. I'm reading it for the first time as well. This is coming from our colleagues in court. This is an extract from her victim statement. Leanne Lucas saying the trauma of being both a victim and a witness has been horrendous. There are times when I will spiral into trauma, and the effect this has had on those close to me is unforgivable. The impact this has had on me can be summed up by one word: trauma. He targeted us because we were women and girls, vulnerable and easy prey. To discover that he had always set out to hurt the vulnerable is beyond comprehensible. For the victims and the surviving girls, I am surviving for you. That is from Leanne Lucas, the dance teacher, her victim statement.
That's heartbreaking.
Being heard in court, and we are to hear a number of those before sentencing. Martin.
Yes, we're not quite clear. It's not quite clear who we're going to hear from, but we do believe that some families will read out their statements. Some will want their statements to be read only by the judge, but others may have lawyers reading out their statements. But this really is the chance for the victims to make it absolutely clear, victims and the families of the victims.
They will. Hopefully they'll get him in prison for this. Hopefully they will. Hopefully they will. So this is what the reporter there was, we got the back end of. So a few days after Axel Rudakubana purchased the knives, he booked a taxi in the name of Simon to take him to the Range High School. On this occasion, it seemed he was spotted by his father. As the car was about to take off, the defendant's father ran out of the house and pled with the driver not to take him. The defendant got out of the car after an argument. Says it's unlikely to be a coincidence that this was the last day of term, with students due to leave the school premises at 12:30 for the summer. The court may infer that this was an earlier attempt to commit offences similar to those he was to carry out at the Heart Space a week later. I did see that reported in the press, that his dad had stopped him. Now, what his dad stopped him for, like, did his dad think he was a threat to others, or did he think he was a threat to himself? Did he know that he was unhinged? What did his dad do at that point? I'm not blaming his dad. The fact that they've tried to get the police involved, they've called the police on their own son 4 times. You know, I don't know whether anybody could have stopped him. Like, short of locking him up, I don't think anybody could have stopped him. Because you can't put him under 24-hour surveillance, can you? Unless you lock him up. So Deanna here has finished outlining the facts. Stop doing that. Then it jumps. It begins to introduce the victim personal statements. First is a statement being read by the father of one of the surviving children. He says he asked his 9-year-old daughter to explain the impact the events had on her. The girl says, "It's been very hard to deal with what happened to me at the Heart Space. I struggle with my emotions. I have scars that I know will be with me forever, but I want to look forward. When people in school ask me, do you wish you weren't there that day? I say that in some ways I wish I wasn't. But also, if I wasn't there, someone else would have been stabbed and they could have died. So I'm glad I might have stopped someone else getting hurt." That's heartbreaking. That's a 9-year-old who has that kind of insight and empathy towards others. You know, in her head, she's thinking, well, if I wasn't there, someone else could have died. So I'm glad it was me because I survived. That's heartbreaking. Her father continues saying her words both horrify us and make us immeasurably proud. Our daughter is strong. Our daughter is positive. Our daughter is brave. Our daughter is everything that Axel Rudakubana is not. She is our hero. She is. She absolutely is. What a strong little girl. What a strong little girl. All right, this is a long one. Leanne Lucas, who was stabbed 5 times during the attack, has just read out this statement. As a 36-year-old woman, I cannot stay in my own home alone. Dear me. As a 36-year-old woman, I cannot go to work. As a 36-year-old woman, I cannot walk down the street without holding my breath as I bypass a person and then glance back to see if they've attempted to stab me. As a 36-year-old woman, I cannot enter a public place without considering how I will get out in the event of an emergency. As a 36-year-old woman, I cannot give myself compassion or accept praise. As how can I live knowing I survived when children died? Yes, but she may have saved lives. She may have saved lives. This is the thing. She may have saved lives. By being there, and her actions may have saved lives. Taking control, telling those children to run, saved lives. She mustn't forget this. I am from Lancashire, yes. Banks, where he lived, is in Lancashire. Southport, where he went to, is over the border in Merseyside. So Banks is on the Lancashire-Merseyside border, but it's in Lancashire. But Southport is on the other side, it's in Merseyside. But I'm in Lancashire. I'm about 20 miles away from Southport. About 20 miles away from where this happened. But I am in Lancashire, yeah. Okay. Oh, dear. There was a long period of time after the incident where I felt I had no trust in society. I am trying to see the goodness in the world. However, the badness has been evidentially proven to me to exist in plain sight on our doorsteps in our community. You never think this is going to happen to you. I never thought this was going to happen to me, and now my mindset has been altered it could happen to you. It could be it could happen to anybody, guys. It could happen to anybody. This is why we need ways to deal with the Axel Rudakubanas of this world before they do something like this. I work with teenagers. I never would have considered that they would hurt me or hurt younger children. I spent many months thinking about the incident 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I just felt I could settle and try to move forward. The trauma of that day is now back at the forefront. I constantly see his face. New memories have appeared, and this will continue to happen for the rest of my life. She's got PTSD, and yes, it may affect her for the rest of her life. But sometimes people who've undergone extreme traumas also experience something that in psychology we call post-traumatic growth. And that is a beautiful thing. My role in Southport was to help others, mainly children and their families. My work was a safe haven for those who needed it the most. All I wanted to do was make a positive impact and highlight goodness and positivity. Families felt a part of a community I had built from scratch. Being self-employed, I have now lost my role, my purpose and my job, as I can no longer provide that guidance and reassurance to anyone. I feel like I can no longer be trusted again. Oh, bless. I know people will disagree and say that is not true. However, his actions have proven I can never feel that level of responsibility again where there may be dangers to others. See, listen, this is the real impact. Physical scars, yes, they're going to be there. They're going to fade. They're going to fade with time, but they are going to be there. This is the real impact of Axel Rudakubana and people like him. This is the real impact. This is someone who was good, who has experienced the most horrific evil, who now cannot trust herself. On that day, I received several injuries that may not have only affected me physically, but also mentally. As I do the girls, of scars we cannot unsee, scars we cannot move on from. Visual daily reminders of not only what he has done to us, but a stark reminder of what others can still do to us. I've endured 3 hospital stays where I undertook multiple surgeries and received treatment for my injuries. At a time where home comforts may have helped me, I sat staring at a hospital wall, further impacting my mental health. My family and friends suffered during that whole period of time, not being able to process what had been done because they were sat by my bedside trying to support me. The trauma of being both a victim and a witness has been horrendous. There are times when I will spiral into trauma and the effect this has had on those close to me is unforgivable. The impact this has had on me can be summed up by one word: trauma. He targeted us because we were women and girls, vulnerable and easy prey. To discover that he'd always set out to hurt the vulnerable is beyond comprehensible. For Alice, Elsie, Bibi, Heidi, and the surviving girls, I am surviving for you. That is heartbreaking. And Axel Rudakubana is glad. He is glad that this happened. He is glad he did this. If anybody is going to dispute that some people are just born evil, then all you need to do is take a look at that face. That's his mugshot. If this guy gets the opportunity to walk free in the UK or anywhere else in the world, this guy is going to be a danger to everybody. So do not let him out. Please, judge, do not allow him the possibility of parole. Please. Let's go back to Sky News.
A girl who survived the attack. So she's reading a victim impact statement.
We're also hearing from Alice's parents. Alice Aguia's parents, that's being read to the court by a prosecution lawyer, because as you were saying earlier on, Martin, some victims' families have chosen not to be here in court today. It is too difficult. That is not how they want to process this. Some are in court and want to stand up and say their statement themselves. Others are doing it through lawyers or other members of the family. That's that's their option. However they want to get that out there, that's at their discretion, right?
Yes, and of course, you know, there will be victims who've chosen not to come to court with I'm sure, an anticipation of the harrowing detail that if they were here, they would be forced to listen to in that sense once you're inside the courtroom. And of course, it's been exactly as we imagined. I mean, the detail has been harrowing and difficult to believe that a young man who was still 17 when he committed these atrocities could behave in that way. Not only that, to be...
And yes, he did. Look, I understand that some people, some members of the family wouldn't want to be there in person to listen to that. I personally would have been there. Like, I was there when my son was killed, I was there at the guy's sentencing. I took immeasurable pleasure from seeing him sobbing. He was sobbing, bless him, in the dark. He was sobbing. Oh, boo-hoo. Boo-hoo. Anyhow.
Joke. She said of Rudakubana's eyes, you didn't look human, you looked possessed. He stabbed this young girl in the arm and the back repeatedly. She goes on to say, I was in a blind panic. I ran out to the landing and I began just screaming for the girls to get down the stairs. She continues, I knew I was running for my life. She said she knew from his eyes he wanted to try to kill us all. I asked, am I going to die? She's addressing Rudakubana directly in this victim impact statement, however he isn't in court. But she says, you stabbed me in my arm so severely that my arm looked like it was inside out. She goes on to say her spine was fractured by the wounds to her back. She said she was so scared and constantly reliving what you did. The life-changing event has left her, she says, living with the consequences every day. She goes on to say, no sane person could do that. It's sickening what you did. Going in there, knowing you're going into a room full of defenseless children. She says, I hope you spend the rest of your life knowing we think you're a coward. That is a young survivor of that Southport attack. So bravely, so young, so bravely delivering her statement herself, telling Rudakubana in no uncertain terms whether he's in that room or not, exactly what he has done to her and what she thinks of him. She's giving that via video link because, of course, as you've said, so many people can't be in that courtroom, whether it's because they're so young or so traumatized by this. I mean, the details, just, you know, having to go through that day as a prosecution have taken us through all those moments and these...
Delivering that statement herself. One of the survivors. These are such brave people, aren't they? He should be made to listen to these statements. He should be made to sit in court with a gag so he can't disrupt, hold him down, tie him down, shackle him, bring him into court and make him listen. I'm sorry, make him listen. Doesn't want to be there because he's a coward. That's why he's pretending he's ill. It's like someone who doesn't want to go to school because they've not done the homework. You know, you don't want to face it. That's what he's done. Make him face it. Shackle him, bring him in a gag, and make him listen. That's my opinion.
The victim impact statement was read out by the father on behalf of the young victim and her family. He said he asked his daughter to explain the impact the events have had on her. And just to warn you, this, buckle up, this is going to be really hard. Reading her words, her father said, it has been very hard to deal with what happened to me at Heartspace. I struggle with my emotions and I have scars that I know will be with me forever, but I want to look forward. When people in school asked me, do you wish you weren't there that day? I said that in some ways I wish I wasn't, but also if I wasn't there,
Let me just go tell viewers what another impact statement from Alice's parents. This is being read by the prosecutor. And Alice's parents, Alice, of course, who was one of the 3 victims who died, they say that this was the most tragic day of our lives. Alice, they say in their statement, was a beautiful girl, perfect in every way, who loved her school, her friends, music, dance, colourful pens, and friendship bracelets. She loved Taylor Swift, Billie Eilish, and Sabrina Carpenter. The statement goes on, adding that she was strong and confident with a world of dreams and unlimited potential. Alice, her parents say in their statement, was going to be surprised with a visit to Disneyland later in the year. Woke up really excited to go to that dance class where she was stabbed. They go on, Alice's parents, to say that their world was shattered and turned upside down. Our life went with her. He took us too, says the statement from Alice's parents. Our dream girl has been taken in such a horrible, undeserving way that it shattered our souls. That's from Alice's parents. Unbelievable that that happened to Alice and to the other 2 victims who died and all of those who were injured. Very, very harrowing words from Alice's parents.
Yeah, remembering Alice and Bibi. And Elsie, today, it is 3 o'clock. We are live at Liverpool Crown Court, where the sentencing hearing for the Southport attacker Axel Rudakubana, sentencing for killing those 3 young girls at a dance class in Southport, is continuing. Axel Rudakubana, as Martin and I were saying, has been ordered out of court for a 2nd time today, once this morning, and again this afternoon, disrupting proceedings, shouting for a paramedic, saying he was feeling unwell. The judge has ordered him out twice now. One of the victims yelled coward at him as he was taken from the room a little earlier on. I just want to go back to that victim statement from that young girl, because I feel like I want to finish that, because she was brave enough to relay those words to her father. This was about a friend at school saying to her, do you wish you weren't there that day? And she said, in some ways, I wish I wasn't, but also if I wasn't there, someone else would have been stabbed and they could have died. So I'm glad I might have stopped someone else getting hurt. What a brave young girl this is. Her father continued, these are not the words that any little girl who just like yoga and making bracelets should ever need to say. Her words both horrify us and make us immeasurably proud. Our daughter is strong. Our daughter is positive. Our daughter is brave. Our daughter is beautiful. Our daughter loves and is loved. Our daughter sees the best in everyone. Our daughter is everything that Axel Rudakubana is not. She is our hero. It takes a lot for those affected to read out these statements in court. And as we said, they're delivered in different ways. This by the father of a young girl, too young to stand up there in court and deliver those words herself, but they are her words. Some being delivered by lawyers, but you've been in court a number of times to see this being done. What is the effect of these victim statements? Because they're meant to be delivered to the judge, but really it's an opportunity for people to stand in court with a perpetrator and tell them exactly what they think of them and the impact they've had on their lives.
To a lot of victims who write and read out these statements, it's the most important thing that the perpetrator standing or sitting across the courtroom in the dock is there to listen and perhaps take in the true impact of their actions. Now, it's very difficult to know what impact it's having on the perpetrators themselves. Sometimes they don't appear to be paying attention. Sometimes their eyes are wandering around the court. It's very seldom that the victims do manage to get the glance and the eye contact with that perpetrator. But nonetheless, I think if you are delivering that statement yourself and the perpetrator is sitting there just a few yards away from you, you must feel that she is at least listening to what you're saying. We've just had a bit more from the statement from Alice's parents being delivered in court by the prosecutor. Them saying, Alice's parents saying that their world was shattered in a matter of minutes. And they go on to say, we would do anything to hold Alice one more time. It feels, they say, like we're stuck in a 5-dimensional horror movie. They go on to say that Alice was their purpose of living. And sometimes they still call her name, only, they say, to be met by a shot in the heart.
Okay. Martin, thank you. Those victim impact statements continue to be read out in the courtroom behind me here at Liverpool Crown Court. Well, this afternoon, the families of 7-year-old Elsie Stankham, 9-year-old Alice De Silva Aguiar, and 6-year-old BB King, who were killed last summer, are waiting patiently to hear the punishment for their children's killer. Reading out her victim impact statement in court today, the girls' dance teacher, Leanne Lucas. She said the trauma of being both a victim and a witness has been horrendous. There are times when I will spiral into trauma, and the effect this has had on those close to me is unforgivable. The impact this has had on me can be summed up by one word: trauma. He targeted us because we were women and girls, vulnerable and easy prey. To discover that he had always set out to hurt the vulnerable is beyond comprehensible. For Alice, Elsie, and BB and the surviving girls, I'm surviving for you.
That just gets to me. Why did he choose this Taylor Swift dance session? Because I think Leanne Lucas got it absolutely spot on. They were easy targets. Little girls at a dance club, easy targets. That's it. That's it in a nutshell. That's it in a nutshell.
Inevitable that this would be one of those that viewers will be able to watch live. It's the only bit of the proceedings that are allowed, is allowed under the law. So we might get perhaps an hour of live TV from inside the court. The judge, and we think he'll probably start sometime in the next hour, might take a break to consider a bit more about what sentence he's going to introduce. And he has to follow quite a lot of guidelines in arriving at his sentence, and he has to explain how he's decided on the sentence. We know, of course, that it will be inevitably a mandatory life sentence, certainly 3 life sentences for the 3 murders. He may decide to give him life sentences for the 10 attempted murders as well. But of course, crucially for the judge, he has to decide the minimum number of years that Rudakubana must spend in jail before he's allowed an opportunity to ask for parole. But it's going to be a very, very big minimum number of years, what's known as the tariff. I imagine it's going to be in the 30s, 40s, something like that. At which point, once he's done that sentence, and of course he'll be a middle-aged man by then, he'll be able to ask for parole. Doesn't mean he'll get it. He will only be released if the parole board, who will consider it, deems him to be of no risk or a very minimum risk to the public. There's no guarantee that he will ever be released from prison.
We've just been hearing in court, I understand from our colleagues inside, that a statement from Elsie's mother has been read out in court. That's been read out by her lawyer. And they are now hearing a statement from a supervisor who was working with Leanne at that dance class. That statement also being read by her lawyer, those victims.
All right, regarding the sentencing, we're going to hear it live, but I'm not going to comment throughout the sentence. I'm not going to comment. I'm going to mute my mic and I'm not going to comment until afterwards. Because if this is anything less than a whole life order, I'll be furious. I'll be absolutely furious. I don't care that he was 17 at the time. I don't care that legally the judge cannot put down a whole life order for somebody who was 17. Surely this is the special circumstance that the judge can draw on. But if he can't, then give him life. Now, look, when they say that murder has a mandatory life sentence attached to it, it does. But life in the UK so very rarely means life. So only if you're granted a whole life order, that life actually means life. Like the equivalent of life without the possibility of parole. That is life. You spend the rest of your days in prison behind bars. But life in the UK is mandatory for murder. However, that can be as little as 15 years. If you murder someone, the judge can give you 15 years. That's the lowest mandatory sentence the judge can give you. And then it goes up, you know, as the judge, as the, you know, there's more and more aggravating factors that the judge can find in the crime itself and the risk you pose, then the judge adds on. Like Thomas Cashman, for example, who murdered Olivia Pratt-Corbell. Again, very close to where I live. Tommy Cashman got 42 years before he's eligible for parole. Now, Tommy Cashman is in his 30s. So 42 years, he's going to be a very, very old man. If he survives that full 42 years, he's going to be a very, very old man before he has the possibility of parole. And I was happy with that. I was happy with that. But if Axel Rudakubana is given, let's say, 30 years, he's going to be in his 40s when he has the possibility of parole. And as I said before, I just can't imagine how the victims and the victims' families will cope with that, knowing that someday, when they are still alive, you know, the victims who were 6, 7, 8, 9 at the time, who survived, they're only going to be in their early 40s. And well, late 40s. No, they're not. They're only going to be in the 30s, aren't they? They're only going to be in the 30s. I can't even do math. They're only going to be in the 30s when he's let out, potentially. And I don't have any faith in parole boards. I'm sorry. I'm sure that many times they make the right decision, but many times they don't. So I don't have faith in parole boards. I don't have faith in anything in the UK justice system, quite honestly. It needs a complete and total overhaul. If you think that the law is an ass in the States, then you haven't been to the UK and seen the justice system here. Honestly, it's an absolute shambles. Absolute shambles. Justice and injustice is done in the dark here in the UK. So anyway, and they're far too soft. They're far too soft on murderers. They're far too soft on people who are committing very, very serious offences here in the UK. And they get let out and they do it again and they do it again and they do it again. They're given a hug and they, you know, the thought redeemed now. The thought redeemed now because they've been through some psychological programs, which I am telling you are freaking nonsense. I'm telling you that as a psychologist, they are freaking nonsense. Not all of them. But the revisitors, I can't say the word, but the reoffending rate here in the UK is horrendous. And there's a reason for that. So I'm sorry. I'm not happy. I'm not happy if this judge doesn't grant a whole life order for this absolute freak of nature. All right. So we're gonna hear the sentence soon. Some details here. It's like we're stuck in a horror movie. Statement being read by the parents of Alice De Silva Aguilar, 9, who was killed by Axel Rudakubana. Alice was very kind. A world of possibilities awaited her. She was a beautiful girl. She was a strong and confident preteen with a world of dreams. That summer's day, she was so excited to go to the dance workshop. In a matter of minutes, our lives were shattered and turned upside down. We kept up hope every second of a 14-hour fight. But when she lost her fight, we lost our lives. It shattered our souls. It feels like we're stuck in a 5D horror movie with moving pictures and moments being relived. We cannot get out. Some moments are easier than others, but every day is the same. Alice is not here. When we wake up, she never will be. There's a sense of loss, a foundation too. Alice was our purpose for living. So what do we do now? Teenage survivor. I watched you stab someone and then I saw you coming for me. It was like slow motion. You stabbed me in the arm and instinctively I turned, and that's when you continued to stab me in the back. Although I didn't feel it at the time because of the adrenaline, you see. All I could hear was the screams. I was so scared of what you were doing. I was in a blind panic. Unbelievable.
As horrendous though they are, these are very, very rare in this extremity.
Yeah, so rare in this extremity, but
rare in this extremity, but does it have to be that extreme? Does it have to get to that point before people will act? My problem with all of this is how many other Axel Rudakubanas are out there who fall through the cracks because they don't want mental health services, as little as they are, and they just have a complete remorse, just a remorseless life. They are a true psychopath, and they can't go through the terrorist channels because they're not wedded to any ideology. They're not considered a quote-unquote terrorist. So what does the law do about them? There has to be more that the law can do for these people who are at a very young age a very big risk to people. What can anybody do? And I don't know what the answer is. I genuinely don't know what the answer is. But whatever the government come up with, I'm not confident that it's going to be helpful. Honestly, quite honestly. But I don't know. I just don't know.
They fulfill that last criteria. He made the public very, very fearful, very, very angry, very, very upset. He did not do any of this, as far as we're aware, to change the view of the government in relation to anything or a government body. Likewise, the other element to a terrorist incident is that the individuals must, and that's the law as it stands under the 2000 Terrorism Act, must have an ideological, religious, racial view in relation to whatever they've carried out.
Look, the law is a complete ass. I understand why the Terrorism Act 2000 is worded as it is, but it is too narrow. Anybody who plans to go out and create terror surely is a terrorist. Why do they have to have an ideological, religious, or racial belief to be called a terrorist? Why do they have to be committing their act to change a government or to send a like? Why? It's too narrow. Surely anybody who is planned and prepared to carry out an act like this, to create terror in a community, by definition, should be a terrorist, regardless of whether they are acting on their own or whether they are, look, just give them the strongest wording. Just, I can't believe that I listened to this crap, and just change it. Thank you, bad boy, for the $4.99. Thank you so much. Let me just read your message. Thank you so much. $4.99. Very kind. I don't know how to get out of this now. There we go.
Screen now, such a beautiful little girl. The statement from her mother has been read in court. Jenny Stankham standing up to call Axel Rudakubana a coward. She tells him that he does not deserve to hear about her daughter. She says, "We are not trying to stand here and list everything you have taken away from us. We refuse to give you the satisfaction." Jenny Stankham tells the killer that his actions were beyond contempt and that he chose a place where he knew his victims would not be able to protect themselves. She goes on to say, "We were robbed of the opportunity to protect our girls. If we had been there, the outcome would have been vastly different. What you did is the act of a coward." Addressing the judge, Jenny Stancombe said, "He took our daughter. There's no greater loss and no greater pain. He has left us with a lifetime of grief." She goes on to add that she hopes Rudakubana uses his time in prison to reflect on the gravity of what he has done. That's the mother of Elsie Stancombe, the little 7-year-old girl murdered in that Southport attack. Jenny Stancombe bravely standing up to speak on behalf of her daughter.
I honestly don't think he's going to sit there in prison reflecting on what he has done. However, we've got an update here on Jenny Stancombe's statement. So she directs some of her remarks at Axel Rudakubana, who is not even in the courtroom. Read out by prosecution lawyer Deanna here. Here's some of what she wanted to say. "We are not going to stand here and list everything you have taken away from us because we refuse to give you the satisfaction of hearing it. We will not let you know anything about Elsie because you don't deserve to know the extraordinary person she was. You know what you have done, and we hope the weight of that knowledge haunts you every single day." No, he's happy about it. He's happy about it. "What you did is not only cruel and pure evil, it was an act of a coward. Though you have stolen our daughter from us, you will not take away our determination to honour her memory. We will carry her love, positivity and her legacy forward, no matter how much pain you have caused." Statement now being read on behalf of Heidi Liddell, the instructor who was running the class with Leanne Lucas the day of the attack. "I was in tears constantly and didn't feel safe in my own home." She's the one who locked herself in the toilet. "It's got to the point that the front and back door has to remain locked at all times. However, all of the doors inside of the house have to be left open as I found it difficult to be in enclosed spaces. I was petrified of what would be on the other side of the door. I replayed the incident over and over in my mind, changing the sequence of events. I struggled mentally with not being physically injured and felt guilty for this." So survivor guilt. But she did exactly the right thing. She saved her own life, but she also saved the life of a little girl who she took in the toilet with her and, locked her in the door, locked her in. So she was actually, she did the right thing in that particular moment that she was in. She saw the toilet, she saw the little girl, she grabbed the little girl, put them both in the toilet and then locked the door. What more could you do, quite frankly?
And those are the kind of details, I guess, we're going to have to wait until we get the results of the Prevent review, which we're going to get soon after today, I'm told, but will also be part of the wider public inquiry that's going to follow.
Next, we have heard from the prosecution, who has read out Heidi Liddell's impact statement. Heidi, one of the two adults at that dance class when Axel Rudakubana launched that attack. She says she doesn't feel safe in her own home. Ms. Liddell, the survivor who helped run the dance class, says she has replayed the incident over and over again in my mind and has struggled with everyday activities. She describes fearing Rudakubana would appear behind her and stab her in the back. She lost trust in those around her and thought horrific things in my mind. Ms. Liddell describes having night terrors. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured him. Speaking about the incident brings on panic attacks, she says. Sometimes she thinks she should feel what the pain was like to be stabbed and felt guilty for surviving. Putting my daughter to sleep is traumatic, she says. Her panic attacks have become paralyzing and cause physical pain. Heidi Liddell saying, I don't feel like I'm anywhere near the end of this journey. That statement read out by the prosecution on behalf of Heidi Liddell, one of the victims of the attack last summer. And Martin, so much information coming out. We are in the run-up to sentencing. That's going to happen in maybe an hour or so, maybe a little longer. What's the course of events?
It really depends how many more victim impact statements there are. And as we're talking, there's another statement that's being read from a statement from the parents of Child A, one of the children, one of the 8 children who was injured, whose name we can't, by law, we're under a legal restriction, we can't identify that child. And those 8 children are being referred to just by a letter. So this is a statement from the parents of child A. We haven't yet got the details of what's being said in that statement. So there'll be perhaps a few more of those.
This is what the murderer looks like. This is his mugshot. This is the person on the thumbnail to this live stream. That's who he is, Axel Rudakubana. These are the 3 little girls that he murdered, Elsie, Alice, and BB. And so many more. So many more. So many more have had their lives upended by him. That is a meme. Oh, is it? Okay, whatever. Okay, I've got to take Cassie out for a wee, so I'll leave this running, but the next couple of minutes, I'm not going to be sitting here watching the chat. So behave. Behave. All right.
Happening a little bit later on this afternoon. Martin, for the moment, thank you. Stay with us here on Sky News. Coming up after a short break, we'll have more from Liverpool Crown Court, both outside and inside the courtroom, as the Southport killer awaits his sentencing.
It's like a football final with only one team on the pitch. This isn't just a call to vote, but a call to remember. The freedom fought for by the African National Congress.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A cyclone and 2 burst dams wiped out hundreds of generational homes.
This was the second dam that the floodwaters hit before it tore into Derna. We are in the heart of Nairobi, and we're watching as protesters were heavily tear gassed.
The sheer fearlessness and persistence of these guys is astonishing.
We help you understand the world with us. I remember going into the iconic Durman market in the heart of Sudan's capital for the first time since the war started. And this is what's left of it. Bullet holes through buildings, shelled balconies, bullet cases on the floor. I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories and the lives of millions of people. This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here. My most memorable interview was with a 15-year-old boy who'd survived being stranded on a migrant boat on its way from Senegal to the Canary Islands.
After 13 days, our food, water, and fuel supply ran out.
I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky News.
You're watching Sky News. We're outside Liverpool Crown Court today with a sentencing hearing for the man who killed 3 young girls at a dance class in Southport last year is continuing. Axel Rudakubana has been ordered to leave the courtroom by the judge twice today, once this morning early on in proceedings and again this afternoon. Let's remind you of how these events unfolded and how we come to be here today. Well, on the 29th of July last year, Rudakubana fatally stabbed Elsie Dot Stankham, Alice De Silva Aguirre and BB King. They were attending a Taylor Swift-themed dance class in Southport. The following day, a vigil was held in memory of the victims, and over the coming days, thousands of flowers were left on Hart Street near where that attack took place. On the 31st of July, a number of protests took place across the country amid false rumours that the girls' killer was a migrant. More than 100 arrests were made. A month into his premiership, Sir Keir Starmer held an emergency Cobra meeting in an effort to curb the disorder. By the 14th of August, more than 1,000 arrests have been made in relation to the riots. On the 30th of October, Rudakubana appeared in court to face 2 new terror charges, production of a biological toxin and possessing information of a kind likely to be useful to a person committing or preparing an act of terrorism. At the start of this week, Rudakubana pleaded guilty to all 16 counts he was charged with. 3 counts of murder, 10 of attempted murder, 2 terror offences, and 1 charge of possession of a knife. Earlier, I spoke to Tawhid Islam, Chief Executive of the Liverpool Muslim Council.
It's extremely difficult. I guess there is some comfort in the fact that there was a guilty plea, and that shared an ordeal of a 4-week trial, and horrific circumstances being lived again and again for the families who have been affected, who have been so strong and so brave in how they've responded since the atrocities took place. Communities are still very much sad. They're still very much trying to reflect on everything that's happened and trying to heal, which will take some time. I guess a lot of detail has come out, which hasn't helped. And there's a lot of confusion and fear as to why Axel Rudakubana had been referred to prevent 3 times. He'd been referred to other agencies as well, and unfortunately, those institutions didn't act accordingly. So whilst there shouldn't be any one individual held to account, there has to be some level of accountability in respects to what happened. Are these institutions fit for purpose? Are these referrals being resourced properly? In a lot of ways, they're not. And communities need answers, and we need the truth to come out. And so we can begin the process of trying to move on. And most importantly, the families can have that process of trying to move on and trying to understand what happened. Ultimately, 3 beautiful lives have been lost, and we need time to reflect on that and ensure, and communities need to be certain that these type of atrocities and tragedies can't be allowed to happen again.
Tara, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you mentioned prevent there. It's now well known that Rudakubana was referred to them 3 times. Yeah. 3 times he was seen not to be a risk because he didn't fit the parameter with what prevent deal with, which is terrorism and extremism. He didn't subscribe to an ideology. He was a young man obsessed with violence. And there are many young men like that in the UK. And he got passed to various different agencies, but none of those agencies seem to have had the remit to deal with that obsession of violence. And it's been pointed out to me, and you raised it before we began speaking here live on air, that this was an act of violence against girls and young women. And that needs to be talked about more, because we talk about, was this terrorism, was this not terrorism? This was violence against women and girls, which in the main, and we talk about it so much here on Sky News, needs to be taken more seriously.
It does, and I feel that it's not being talked about enough. He did target a girls' dance class, and we hear more and more in the media about violence against women and this perpetuation of violence against women. And why aren't we having serious discussions about that? Like saying, we're talking about
exactly dealt with appropriately.
Exactly. Why are we talking about terrorism and extremism all the time? Why aren't we talking about why was a girls' dance class targeted? Why are women being targeted? And why are some of the most violent acts being committed against women in across all communities? And that discussion doesn't seem to be being had at the moment, and it's worrying that this is being allowed to just play out in a way that isn't getting to the fundamentals of what happened. That's who he targeted, and it needs to be.
All right, I came in at the latter end of that, but the essence here is it can't be classed as a terrorist attack because it's not someone with an ideology. It's not someone with a religious or a racial ideology. Okay. But when you start targeting groups of people, surely it shouldn't matter who that group of people is. When you are targeting premeditated attacks on vulnerable people, that creates a terror in that community for those people and way beyond those people. Anybody in that area over the last few months who has a little girl will be thinking, you know, there by the grace of God go I. It could have been me. It could have been my child. It could be my community next, because there is so many more Axel Rudakubanas out there, and the system is not apt to deal with them. That's a problem. That's a problem. But does it really matter what it's called is the thing. Does it matter what it's called? This is an act of evil. Let's just call it what it is. If we don't want to use the word terrorism, that's fine. Let's call it what it is, an act of absolute evil, and let's deal with it appropriately and not let this guy see the light of day ever again. So while we're seeing, I don't know why Sky News do this. They give us the temperature everywhere in the world. All right, cool. Let's see if there's any updates on BBC. All right, we do. The court now hears from another of the surviving children. I thought that the man who stabbed me was a cleaner when I first saw him. And what was happening, I thought it was a prank. I realised it wasn't a prank when I saw blood coming out of me. Oh, my God. I remember everything being fuzzy, and everything that was going through my mind was about my family and friends. I was thinking, I don't want to die. I've got to get out of here. I was so scared and worried, but there are no words to really describe what happened on that day. The mother of one of the surviving children says, Child A thought the attack was a prank, and when Axel Rudakubana approached her with the knife, she told him that she didn't want one. She didn't want to play. He then attacked her. Like, just the innocence of it all. Just the innocence of it. Our world collapsed in that moment, and we are still trying to rebuild it. When she woke up from surgery, she lunged forward and reached her arms out, reaching for her best friend, still believing she was in danger, trying to get to her. They were separated in the most terrifying way. Horrible. Thought it was a prank. And why would you think it was anything other than, why would you think this man is here to kill me at the age of 5 or 6 or 7? Why would you think that? Horrifying. Horrifying.
From the courtroom this morning. He isn't in court at the moment, we understand. Well, earlier today, Rudakubana arrived here at Liverpool Crown Court in a prison van. He then walked into the courtroom wearing a grey tracksuit and face mask and sat in the dock with his head in his lap. Earlier this week, he pleaded guilty to 3 counts of murder, 10 counts of attempted murder, 2 terrorism charges and possession of a knife. This afternoon, the families of 7-year-old Elsie Stankham, 9-year-old Alice De Silva Aguiar, and 6-year-old BB King, who were killed last summer, are waiting to hear the punishment for their children's killer. We've had a number of victim impact statements this afternoon, including from the girls' dance teacher, Leanne Lucas. She said this: the trauma of being both a victim and a witness has been horrendous. There are times when I will spiral into trauma, and the effect this has had on me, on those close to me, is unforgivable. The impact this has had on me can be summed up by one word: trauma. He targeted us because we were women and girls, vulnerable and easy prey. To discover that he had always set out to hurt the vulnerable is beyond comprehensible. For Alice, Elsie, BB, Heidi, and the surviving girls, I am surviving for you. Well, those victim impact statements continue to be read out in court this afternoon. You can follow details from Inside Court on skynews.com on our live blog. We're bringing a lot of that detail to you as well.
Was he frightened of getting COVID because he was wearing a mask? No, I think he was hiding his face because somehow he thought he was magically going to get away. Like, he'd taken steps to buy the weapon anonymously by using a VPN, and he's probably given a fake name to the taxi driver. And he thought he was going to somehow get away. He obviously hadn't planned his escape route. He'd become totally fixated on the act itself, taken steps to try to hide his identity, and then not thought it through to the end. How is he going to get away? How is he going to get away to use his ricin, which he had in his bedroom? Because clearly he had a plan for that, or else he wouldn't have bothered making it, would he? So that's why he was wearing the mask.
About all the other children that were there, and I feel guilty I wasn't able to help them. So more harrowing details from another victim, a surviving victim of Rudakubana.
Yeah, we've heard that a couple of times now in the victim impact statements, survivor's guilt. Gosh, it's really hard to hear and difficult for them to give those statements, some of them being read out in person, some by lawyers, some by the prosecution team. Away from the victim impact statements this afternoon, we have been learning a lot from the prosecution about Rudakubana. This is essentially a 4 to 6 week trial condensed into a day. So we've had a lot of detail about what happened on the day, what happened in the aftermath, some detail about the police investigation in terms of searching his house, but we've also...
Oh, you were being facetious. It's difficult to detect, you know, that hint of sarcasm in a chat. But maybe someone should have give him COVID. Give him his ricin. Give him his ricin to eat. Make that his every meal until he dies.
How he called Childline and said that he was worried about, you know, what his thoughts were about wanting to kill people.
He said, what would happen if I wanted to kill someone?
Yeah, I mean, and again, some detail about the various organisations and agencies that, you know, began to have some dealings with him, but as we've kept saying, it didn't really go any further. And as I said earlier, you know, this isn't somebody who fell through the net. You know, he was caught in the net by all these agencies. And yet, after some initial engagement with him, nothing was done or was able to be done to stop that growing obsession of his with extreme violence that led after 4 or 5 years of these troubling incidents to what happened last July.
I was speaking to Peter Williams, the former Merseyside police inspector, who you know well, now a lecturer at John Moores University, and he described today and what's happened here as a watershed case. What do you think he meant by that in terms of, you talked about Rudakubana being caught in the net. He was, you know, he was known to so many authorities and organisations, but it seems like we're getting a sense that nobody quite knew what to do with him because he didn't fit in the parameters of their organisation. Prevent, for example, he wasn't seen as being at risk of being radicalised. He wasn't seen as a terrorist threat, but he was a young man with violent tendencies and an obsession with violence. Is that what he meant by this being a watershed moment in terms of being able to look at a case like this, at all of the background, and go, this could potentially be a problem?
I think what he means is that it's had such wide publicity and prompted such widespread public concern that it has led to all number of inquiries that are going on, not least the public inquiry ordered by the Home Secretary, but, you know, reviews of the contempt laws about what can be said, you know, ahead of a trial, a review of the prevent system, and there's a Lancashire safeguarding partnership review about all those various individual engagements with Rudakubana by the different agencies,
What
that
could be done better?
surely something will emerge that will perhaps
Sorry, guys, I was muted. Sorry. What I was saying was, this guy said that he didn't fit through the net. He didn't slip through the net. Well, he did slip through the net. Yes, the net caught him. The net caught him numerous times. However, because he didn't fulfill the whatever criteria necessary to go on to the next step, he was just let go. So in relation to Prevent, that deals with terrorist threats and extremism, he wasn't deemed a terrorist or an extremist because he had no particular ideology. He was just evil. He was just evil. So where do they send him? Where do they send him? Is there's no catch then? You know, Prevent can't deal with him. Whatever that next step might be, they can't deal with it. So therefore, they just let him go. So the problem is just let go. And they expel him from school. They send him to a special school, which he doesn't attend because he's too anxious to leave his house. Well, obviously, that's not true, is it? Or else we wouldn't be here today, would we? That's not true. And he didn't want to go to mental health services. Now, if he'd gone to mental health services, would we still be here today? Yeah, I think we would. What can mental health services do against a complete psychopath? What can they do against a complete psychopath? Other than lock him up. But if you're not sectionable under the Mental Health Act, they can't lock him up. So mental health services fail. His parents called the cops on him 4 times. But unless he's committed an actual crime, there's nothing the cops can do. So where do we go? Some people are just born evil, and they will commit evil acts if you give them the opportunity to. So the only option for guys like this is to lock them up forever. Or my preferred option, because I, as a UK taxpayer, I don't want my tax money to go to holding these evil people in prison. Just take them around the back and shoot them in the head. It's very humane. All right, let's see if there is any more on this. Okay. All right, so we've just got one more statement. So, read on behalf of the parents of 2 sisters. So somebody had 2 kids in that class. It was the worst day of our lives. Both of our daughters suffered horrendous injuries. The girls are resilient, but the injuries they sustained still affect them. Since the incident, the girls can't be alone. They don't leave their parents' side. They sleep with their parents. They are unable to walk to school without feeling scared. They won't get out of the car if it's dark outside. Any slight noise can alarm them. They struggle with simple things that weren't a problem before, like taking a shower and brushing their teeth. It's like having babies again. This is the depth of the trauma that this guy has caused. It's not the physical injuries. Initially, obviously, it's surviving the physical injuries. But at this stage, and now moving forward, those physical scars will heal. Those physical scars will, yes, you'll be able to see them, but they will fade with time. The psychological scars are much more pervasive, will last a lot longer, and are way more difficult to treat. It's just really heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking that this was the face. This was the face that they were met with. This is the face they were met with. This is the face, the very last face that Elsie, Alice, and BB saw before they died. That's the very last face that Elsie, Alice, and BB saw before they died, and so many others. Innocence just lost. One little girl thinking it was a prank. And why would she think anything else? Why would she think, you know, she's there at a dance class, why would she think that someone was there to commit mass murder? A little girl. Innocence just completely gone. Just like that. Never to be the same again. Heartbreaking.
In the attack, the mother telling the court that the attack has changed her family's lives forever and that her daughters live in a state of constant paranoia. She says they suffered horrendous injuries, and for one of them, they have been life-changing. She adds that one of her children has become extremely self-conscious because of the scars that have been left on her body, and she has caught her crying about the way she looks. Excuse me, just one moment. She said it didn't cross our minds that we should be worried, we feel helpless, and we feel guilty. We have to live with the guilt that we sent our children to that event on that day. Oh, it's been a hard afternoon for everyone involved here. I'm going to bring in the Archbishop of Liverpool, Malcolm McMahon, to find some words just to sort of try and get your head around what is happening here today, because it's really hard to hear about those lives changing on that day, and we're not even 6 months on from what happened.
Yes, sometimes we just can't find words to comfort us, to explain, or in any way to rationalize or support our thoughts in when we're confronted with such an atrocity and a tragedy. And my thoughts at the moment are for the grieving parents. There were so many grieving parents, not just the parents of Alice and of Elsie Dot and of BB, but also the other parents whose children were at that dance class. So my thoughts are with them at this time. And I hope that the community, the faith community and the Christian community can stay together in the way in which they've come together in the face of this appalling series of events, and offer support and comfort.
When I was in Southport that week, the community came out onto the streets. I was on Hart Street where the attack took place, and people didn't know in the immediate aftermath what to do, what to say. They just knew that they had to go somewhere to be with other people. The sense of community came to that point on Hart Street, the floral tributes, and a number of faith groups, different faith groups came out to offer support and open their doors. And their message was, regardless of what your faith is, there is a place for you and we will offer support. And I feel that that just wasn't faith groups, that was the community of Southport as a whole. In fact, Merseyside.
Yes.
And that often happens under tragic circumstances, isn't it?
I think
from the worst comes the best.
It does. It's sad that it takes the tragedy for the good to come out. But I must say that in this part of the world, you can tell from my accent, I'm not a native up here, but I've worked here for some years now. And there is this openness to, which all the communities embrace. And we do work together so well, we live together so well, no matter what our backgrounds or our religions. And that openness, I think, is going to be part of the solution to this tragedy. It will take years, though, because the grief which has descended on us all will remain for a long time.
We talk about healing, don't we, after something like this happens? And speaking to members of the community in Southport this week, they have said that the healing won't really start to begin until after this part is over, because this is reliving the events of that summer, and they knew this was going to be difficult. But after sentencing today, they can start. How do you start to heal from something like this, whether you are a parent of a child that was attacked or in the community, because everybody knows everyone in Southport, everybody knows somebody affected, those people that were living on the street that day, everybody has been touched by this. Where do you begin?
I think you begin by just being with other people. You don't, as I was saying at the beginning, you don't really have to say anything. You've got to be there for people. It means small acts of kindness. It means being welcoming. It means taking time with people, sometimes just sitting with people who are hurt and bereaved. That's the way in which we heal each other. So.
Okay, we'll let the bishop carry on talking. What time's the court open till? Good question. They normally kind of wrap up court proceedings 4:30 to 5 p.m. I don't know that there's a particular closing time though. Maybe they'll make an exception and just carry on and you know, making people come back tomorrow, I think, is somewhat heartless. And you gave evidence at Crown Court, they closed on the dot at 5. Yeah, when I was a juror in 2020, they used to let us out probably about 4:30. I think there was one day, though, where there was testimony and the judge didn't want to kind of stop it partway through, and we were there longer than 5. So I don't know. I think it probably depends on the court, like on the administrators at a particular court. But if the hard line, you know, closing at a particular time, I don't want the families to have to come back tomorrow. I mean, it's nearly 4 o'clock now. You know, I expected the sentencing to come maybe about an hour ago, but there's just so many victim impact statements. That's the thing, and that's, you know, they've got to let people have that opportunity to say their bit. They can't just stop that bit, can they? But the judge may make them come back to me. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. It's terrible it was allowed to happen. Well, you see, the problem is the government, they act after an atrocity. That's when they act. And they put something in place, and maybe that'll close a loophole, but then there's so many other loopholes, and then it happens again, and then they have to do something else. You know, it's just, it's like playing catch up. Every time they close one loophole, there's a million others that are there. Our country's in a state of emergency. Look, I think you could argue that the whole world is in a state of emergency. I think you could argue that, honestly. I don't think the UK is any worse than anywhere else. I think it's better than some places. Are we bound by the European Court of Human Rights? We used to be. I don't know what I don't know how much the Court of Human Rights can do now. We've gone through Brexit, so we're not in the European Union anymore. So I don't know. I honestly don't know. Oh no, his son was mugged at knife point about 20 years ago. It messed him up for years. He wasn't even injured. Yeah, it's the post-trauma. It's horrible. It's horrible. Someone tried to mug me once, and I broke his wrist. Let's just say that. All right, let's listen in.
But the prosecution submission's now complete. The defence case now beginning, but it should be very brief. We understand.
The defence case? The defence case? They have no case. Lock the fucker up. Sorry for my swearing. Just lock the fucker up. Oh, it's not an EU thing. Oh, okay, we will be then. We will be then. So yeah, the European Court of Human Rights. Yeah, the Human Rights Act. Yeah, we're still bound by that, I think. Honestly, it's never occurred to me. That has never occurred to me since Brexit. Still bound by the European Court of Human Rights. Didn't I stand up to a bully on the motorbike? You know what, I've dealt with a lot of people in my time. I confronted some lads. They'd taken, it was where I used to live. I didn't wasn't when I was living here, but there was a field down the end of my road, and some lads had stolen a car, and they'd rolled it down the hill. Oh, we're here. Muting out.
During this sentence hearing, Axel Rudakubana was determined to disrupt the proceedings so that he would not have to face the victims of his crimes and justice. I was required to have him removed from court, not because that is what he wanted, but he was preventing the hearing from being held in the normal way. Accordingly, I passed sentence in his voluntary absence, whilst his counsel, both leading and junior, and solicitor are present in court. On the 29th of July last year, Rudakubana left home and travelled by taxi to the Hart Space in Hart Street, Southport, armed with a large kitchen knife, which he had bought on the internet on the 13th of July, 16 days earlier. He knew that there was to be a Taylor Swift-themed yoga and dance workshop where very young girls, mostly aged between 6 and 11, were to enjoy an organised party safely in an upstairs room where the organisers were to look after him. There were 26 children in the party, all of them happy and enjoying themselves. It started at about 9:30 that morning on a warm summer's day, but he had targeted those very young children for the horrific he was intent upon. At 11:45 that morning, he arrived and walked straight into the building, up the stairs to where he could hear the sound of happy children. In his mind was the intention to murder as many of them as he physically could. He wanted to try and carry out mass murder of innocent, happy young girls. And over about 15 minutes, he savagely killed 3 of them and attempted to kill 8 more, as well as 2 adults who tried to stop him. It was of such extreme violence, of the utmost and exceptionally high seriousness, that it is difficult to comprehend why it was done. I'm sure that Rudakubana had a settled and determined intention to carry out these offences, and that had he been able to, he would have killed each and every child, all 26 of them, as well as any adults who got in his way. It was only because some managed to escape that prevented many more from being murdered. I'm also sure that after the other children, 8 of whom he had very seriously injured, managed to escape, it left him in the upstairs room and landing, where he returned to continue his sustained and brutal violence against 2 of the youngest of those children, stabbing them multiple times. That demonstrated how determined he was to cause the maximum suffering he could. Left alone with them where they'd fallen, he continued shocking and extreme violence. Many who have heard the evidence summarized by the prosecution in this hearing, and having seen the CCTV recordings played with a view from the outside of the building, might describe what he did as evil. Who could dispute it? But on any view, it was at least the most extreme, shocking, and exceptionally serious crime. In describing the injuries caused to each of the victims, I will summarise the evidence, being conscious that the families of Elsie Stankham, B.B. King, and Alice de Silva Aguiar are in court, as are the families of each of the other victims. It's necessary, however, in sentencing, briefly to refer to the injuries. Elsie Stankham was aged only 7 when Rudakubana inflicted at least 85 sharp force injuries to her head, face, neck, torso, and upper limbs. Severe force was used to cause her death. B.B. King was aged only 6 when he inflicted at least 122 sharp force injuries to her head, face, neck, torso, and upper limbs. It was the opinion of Dr. Seeker, the pathologist, that Rudakubana had tried to decapitate her. He concluded that severe force was used to kill her. Alice de Silva Aguiar was aged 9 when he stabbed her, including a chop wound to her head and 4 stab wounds to her back, causing substantial internal injury. Although she managed to escape out of the building, she collapsed, and despite all medical help, she died in hospital at 1:20 in the morning the following day.
We are just listening to the judge's remarks ahead of the sentencing of Axel Rudakubana. Some really distressing details heard there inside court about the injuries inflicted on the 3 girls who were killed by Rudakubana that day in July. The judge saying that the evidence seen in court today, alongside CCTV, he said that...
I think maybe he's going to talk about the children who survived. And they didn't want, the parents of the girls that died, they didn't want the severity of the injuries to be made public. Cassie's brought a ball. Thank you. Thank you. No. 122 injuries. So it seems that what he did, once he was trapped, once the others had escaped and he was trapped, there was B.B. King and Elsie, on the floor, probably dying or hopefully already dead. I say hopefully in the, at least they didn't, if they were dead, they didn't know that he continued to stab them. That's what I mean. But 122 stab wounds, that is beyond evil. Once somebody's already down and they're dying, you continue to stab them. Okay, all right. Let's carry on listening.
Might call this evil, and the judge said, very difficult to argue with that case. I think we're dipping in and out of what the judge is saying.
We haven't got the feed at the moment, Martin, so we'll keep talking. We won't dwell on those injuries. The judge has said it. That is out there. That's not something to dwell on at the moment, out of respect for the families. But the judge, obviously, going to that level of detail, just to outline the horror of that day, because these judges' remarks are part of his explanation as to the sentencing to come, which comes at the end of these remarks. We did hear from the defence, which he said would be brief, and it was. Not much detail coming out from them. Mitigating circumstances they were there to outline. They said the most significant factor was the fact that he was just 17. We've got the live feedback. Let's listen in.
Rudakubana attacked her also. She did all she could before escaping, but suffered 5 stab wounds to her head, neck, back, shoulder blade and arm. She required a blood transfusion. She also suffered fractures to a spinal vertebrae, a rib, a shoulder blade, and all caused by severe force. And Jonathan Hayes was an adult working in a different part of the upstairs to the building. After he heard the disturbance, he went up and was attacked with a knife. Rudakubana stabbed him in the leg, causing a deep wound as he tried to kill him. He was only saved when another witness appeared. I have read each of the victim personal statements, and many have been read out to the court. They are all deeply moving. The harm that Rudakubana has caused to each family, each child, and to the community has been profound and permanent. For the families of Elsie, BB, and Alice, they will never recover from what happened to their daughter. For those children and the adults that he attempted to murder, their lives will never be the same, nor will their families who are left to look after their exceptionally brave daughters. Also for the emergency services whose personnel had to deal with the aftermath. In just under 15 minutes, Rudakubana murdered 3 children, attempted to murder 8 other children, and also 2 adults. He was prevented from murdering more only by the escape of the other children. When the police arrived at about 12 noon, they found him standing over the body of B.B. King and still holding the knife. It was B.B. who had suffered at least 122 separate knife wounds. He was arrested, taken into custody, and whilst Rudakubana did not say anything in his police interviews, he did make unsolicited comments which are deeply disturbing, including, quote, "I'm glad to see those kids are dead. It makes me happy," close quote, and, quote, "It's a good thing those children are dead," close quote. In his home, the police discovered clear evidence of a settled intention to carry out mass killing. On one of his computers were files proving that he had a long-standing preoccupation with violent killing and genocide. Of particular significance were copies of an Al-Qaeda training manual, which described methods of killing with a knife and where to attack the victim. Part of it referred to attacking the head and neck, just as he had done to some of the victims in this case. Also, the manual provided instruction on how to produce ricin, a highly dangerous toxin, which can cause multiple deaths and has no known antidote. I am sure that he had followed those instructions because the police found in his bedroom the materials to produce ricin and a pulp residue within a container. That was examined by an expert in chemical and biological warfare agents, Dr. Martin Pierce, and confirmed it was ricin pulp and castor oil. His opinion was that there was sufficient ricin pulp that with some further purification process, it would have provided a range of up to 1,269 doses, which would cause death if inhaled. However, there was no evidence that Rudakubana had recently tried purification. I am satisfied that for some time, he had planned to kill as many people as he could, as the prosecution have called it, quotes, a mass killing. He bought the knife he wanted to use, which had a particularly sharp point. He had read information on how to stab people with greatest effect to kill them. He saw the publicity for a children's party in Southport at the Heart Space Dance Studio and decided to kill as many as he could, targeting very young children. I'm also satisfied that if he hadn't decided that way of killing, in time, he was highly likely to use the ricin he had produced. The prosecution have made it clear that these proceedings were not acts of terrorism within the meaning of the terrorism legislation, because there is no evidence that Rudakubana's purpose was to advance political, religious, racial, or ideological cause. I must accept that conclusion. However, in my judgment, his culpability for this extreme level of violence is equivalent in its seriousness to terrorist murders, whatever his purpose. Whether his motivation was for terrorism or not misses the point. What he did on the 29th of July last year has caused such shock and revulsion to the whole nation that it must be viewed as being at the very extreme level of crime. His culpability and the harm he caused and intended were at the highest. I do not, however, take into account against him what happened in different parts of the country after his arrest. He did not cause that. Axel Rudakubana was born in Cardiff on the 7th of August of 2006. He's a UK citizen, now aged 18, but was still 17 when he committed these offences. He was only 9 days short of his 18th birthday, which has a particular significance. Had he been 18, I make it clear that I would have been compelled to impose on him life imprisonment without a minimum term, otherwise known as a whole life term, meaning that he would never be released. However, the law does not permit such a sentence for those offenders who are under 18 when they offend. Rudakubana has only one previous conviction on the 19th of February 2020 when he was aged 13 for possession of a knife on school premises, assault and possession of an offensive weapon in a public place. He was made subject to a juvenile referral order. Those offences took place when he returned to the school from which he'd been excluded due to his previous behaviour. He entered the school without permission, carrying a knife and hockey stick, intent on attacking another pupil, whom he said had bullied him. For the offence of murder on counts 1, 2, and 3, the sentence must be custody for life. I'm required to fix the minimum term which he must serve in custody before he may apply to the parole board for his release. It will be for the board to decide if he is ever safe to be released into the community, and if ever he is, he will remain on licence for the rest of his life, subject to recall into custody if he breaches his licence terms. The minimum term I will fix will be a very substantial one, and the very least he will be detained, which will mean that he will serve almost the whole of his life in custody. I consider at this time that it is likely he will never be released, and that he will be in custody for all his life. The starting point in deciding the minimum term in custody on counts 1 to 3 must be 27 years, because he was 17 years old when he murdered Elsie, Bibi and Alice. I find the following circumstances make those murders yet more serious. Firstly, there are two exceptionally high factors that would, but for his age, require me to impose a whole life term. The murder of 2 or more persons where each murder involved a substantial degree of premeditation or planning, and it was in each case the murder of a child with such premeditation or planning. Secondly, the children were particularly vulnerable because of their very young age, being 7, 6 and 9 respectively. Thirdly, the physical suffering that he caused as he repeatedly stabbed them. Fourthly, there were 3 murders. Fifthly, at the time he carried out these murders, he also attempted to kill 10 more, 8 of whom were also very young children. Sixthly, the severity of the injuries caused to the victims. Seventhly, he produced highly toxic poison ricin, which he was very likely to use at some time had he not committed these offences. In mitigation for this offending, Rudakubana is still only 18 years old. However, I consider that his age has already provided him with a substantial reduction in his sentence, because it means that he has avoided a whole life term. Whilst he has entered guilty pleas, saving the families and victims the pain of a trial, he cannot claim to have shown any remorse. His unsolicited comments in the police station made clear his feelings. However, lack of remorse is not an aggravating factor. I have read evidence within a statement of an assistant head teacher which describes how Rudakubana's early years at school developed from a normal student to one who became increasingly threatening to those he felt had wronged him, leading to his exclusion. None of this gives any indication of what he was to do on the 29th of July last year. I have read the intermediary assessment report dated the 24th of September 2024, in which its author said that he presented as having high-functioning autism and that he does not have any associated learning disabilities. The report found that he had some communication and attention difficulties. None of this offered any explanation for this offending. No further expert evidence has been provided on his behalf. I've taken into account the overarching principles sentencing children and young people. The fact that he's now 18 years old does not make the guideline irrelevant. However, I'm not persuaded that his emotional age is different to his chronological age. I will give him the appropriate discount to reflect the fact that whilst almost 18, he was still young. In sentencing, I will impose concurrent sentences, meaning they will all be served at the same time. However, I will treat the murder offences in counts 1 to 3 as the lead offences and take into account all of the total offending when fixing the minimum term of custody he must serve. Also, I have in mind the totality of the sentences requiring me to take a step back and consider whether they're just and proportionate, and I conclude that they are. The guilty pleas will allow some small discount on the sentence because they were entered so late on the first day of the trial. I turn to the attempted murder offences in counts 4 to 13. Each of these offences requires me to impose concurrent sentences of custody for life under section 272 of the Sentencing Act 2020. Each offence is within Schedule 19 of the Act. I'm satisfied in the circumstances of these offences that Rudakubana is a dangerous offender and that the circumstances justify the imposition of a life sentence. I must then fix the custodial term which he must serve. For each of the offences where he attempted to murder a child, being counts 4 to 11, the appropriate sentence guideline is category A2 with a starting point for sentence of 30 years and a range up to 35 years. The very young age of each victim and the substantial planning by him requires me to increase that sentence to the top of the range before reducing it to reflect his age, his late guilty plea, and to reach the minimum term for these offences. Accordingly, I firstly reduced the sentence to 30 years for his age and 27 years for the guilty plea, leading to a minimum term of 18 years on each of counts 4 to 11 concurrently. On counts 12 and 13, which are attempted murder of the adults, Leanne Lucas and Johnson Hayes, the guideline category is B2 with a starting point of 25 years and a range up to 30 years. With the same aggravating factors of seriousness and mitigation for counts 4 to 11, I increased the sentence to 30 years before reducing it to 27 years for age and to 24 years for guilty plea, leading to a minimum term on those two counts of 16 years concurrently. I now turn to the remaining counts. On count 14, having an article with a blade, the sentence is 18 months custody. This is a category 1A offence for which I have reduced the sentence to reflect his age and plea. Count 15, production of a biological toxin. There is no offence-specific sentence guideline. I've been assisted by reference to the case of the Crown against Mohammed Ammar Ali, 2016 EWCA Crim 864, in which a sentence of 8 years imprisonment after conviction was upheld by the Court of Appeal, a decision based upon its own facts. I'm satisfied that his production in this case of ricin was more advanced and is associated with Rudakubana's mindset to cause many killings, whilst he had not used the ricin by the time of his arrest, taking into account his culpability and the harm risked, allowing for his age and guilty plea, I sentence him concurrently to 12 years custody. Count 16, possession of a document likely to be useful to a person preparing an act of terrorism. The sentence is 18 months custody after taking into account his age and plea and applying the guideline category 3C. I'm now going to sentence Axel Rudakubana, having explained my reasons. On counts 1 to 3 murder, I sentence him to custody for life with a minimum term which he must serve in custody of 52 years, less the time he's served already. He's been in custody for 175 days on remand, which will be credited. Therefore, the minimum term is 51 years and 190 days. On counts 4 to 11, I sentence him concurrently to custody for life with a minimum term of 18 years, less 175 days served, on each count concurrently with each other. Allowing for his time served on remand, the minimum term on those counts is 17 years and 190 days. On counts 12 and 13, I sentence him concurrently to custody for life with a minimum term of 16 years, less his time served on remand, on each count concurrently with each other, leading to a minimum term on those counts of 15 years and 190 days. On counts 14 and 16, I sentence him to 18 months custody concurrently with each other and all other offences. He will pay the appropriate amount under he will pay the appropriate amount under 18 statutory charge, which will be entered on the court record. Accordingly, in total, I sentence Rudakubana to 13 sentences of custody for life and a minimum term to be served in custody of 51 days and 190 days. It is highly likely that he will never be released.
The judge there in this case delivering his remarks and the sentencing of Axel Rudakubana.
At the end there, he said 51 days. Did you see it? 51 years and 190 days. You know what? I'm kind of happy with that. He'll be 70 by the time he's eligible for parole. I think that's the very... As he wasn't allowed to give him a whole life order. Look, guys. This evil monster was 9 days short of his 18th birthday. There's a reason why he did it then. He thought if he gets caught and he's still a kid, he's going to get away with next to nothing. If he was 9 days older, there's no doubt that he would have been given a whole life order. Very calculated. Everything he did was calculated. The thing he didn't work out was how to escape. Well, he may not have wanted to escape. Maybe he thought that he could just walk with a few years because he was a kid and that'd be that. But the judge saw right through him and he's imposed the sentence as strong as he could make it. I just wish that he would have said, you serve the murders consecutively. I wish he'd have said, you know, for the 3 murders, you serve concurrently 51 years and 190 days. However, the 27 years that you get for the attempted murders, you serve that consecutive to the 51 years. So 27 and 51, he's definitely never going to see freedom. I wish he'd done that. I wish he'd done that. Maybe he's not allowed. I don't know. But he's going to be 70 before he's eligible for parole. So I don't think he's going to reach the age of 70. I honestly don't think he's going to reach the age of 70. I don't know where they're going to send him. I would imagine if he behaves in a crazy manner and he gets diagnosed with something like, I don't know, schizophrenia or some serious personality disorder, he'll end up serving his time in a secure hospital like Ashworth. I've been to Ashworth. And they're exactly like prisons. They just have, you know, psychologists and psychiatrists on staff and stuff. And they've got the amount of staff that are trained that are able to deal with crazy people. But they're no walk in the park. They're not. The secure hospitals here, for the most crazy of the crazy, they're not a walk in the park. So if he goes to Ashworth, which is in the northwest, or he goes to, I don't know what the others are called. I only know Ashworth. Roehampton is there. I can't remember now. Anyway, I suspect that at some point he may end up there. And that's where Ian Brady ended up. Broadmoor, yeah, Broadmoor, thank you, Broadmoor. I think Roehampton's a woman's prison. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah, Broadmoor's the other big one. But yeah, Ashworth, Ian Brady ended up living out his days, being force-fed because he was on hunger strike. They wouldn't let him die. They wouldn't let Ian Brady die for a reason. Anyway, Ian Brady served out his life in Ashworth. And it's not a walk in the park. But if he's there, he will live out his days. He'll live out his days. And I don't know whether the judge can make sure there's a note on his file to any future parole board saying, never let this guy out. I don't know whether the judge is allowed to do that, you know, like behind the scenes, under the desk, so to speak. You know, a little note on his file saying, any future parole board in 51 years, because I'm not going to be here, the judge isn't going to be here, we're not going to be able to check up on this, are we? But in 51 years and 190 days, when he's eligible for parole, maybe there's a little note on his file saying, future parole board, this guy is not to be let out. I don't know. I don't know whether they do that kind of thing. I can only hope that they do that kind of thing. So Axel Rudakubana, rot in hell, you absolute complete psychopath. Psychopath, true evil. True evil. And let's end with this picture of two little angels, Elsie and BB, who sustained the most horrific injuries. Elsie 7, BB 6, 122 stab wounds. And then Alice, who managed to stumble out, but her injuries were so severe that she died 14 hours later in hospital. And the other 8 children, who some of whom have got life-changing physical injuries, but the psychological scars are going to be with them forever. And then Leanne, Lucas and Jonathan Hayes, the adults, who honestly, I think, had they not intervened, if Leanne had, you know, hadn't told the children to run, I think the death count would have been higher. And Heidi, who saved one child by locking her in the toilet. They were heroes that day. They don't feel like they are, but they were. They were. So Axel Rudakubana can rot in hell. There's a special place. I have to believe there's a special place after this world for people like that. I have to believe that. I have to believe that to make it all feel okay. So thank you all for joining me. This was pretty harrowing. It's horrible. Horrible. The details that we heard are absolutely horrible. The families, I just can't imagine. I can't imagine. But there's got to be something. There's got to be something better. The UK justice system must do better at catching these people early, dealing with these people early. So we'll wait and see what loophole they close, which will open another million loopholes. But hey, that's how the justice system works, sadly. But I do think in this case, we do have a semblance of justice here. 51 years and 190 days is a good one. All right. If it wasn't just for those extra 9 days, and we would have a whole life order. But still, I'm happy with the way that the judge dealt with that sentencing. So thank you all. Thanks, mods. Thanks to all who joined me. Thanks to the people who donated while the sentencing was going on. And welcome to the 5 new members. I didn't catch your names. I wasn't able to catch your names. But welcome to you 5 new members donated by Kimberly. So enjoy the members area, and I will see you next time. Enjoy the rest of your day. And if you're following the Sebastian Rogers case, less than an hour before I went live, I did post a short, only like 11 or 12 minute video. So if you didn't catch that, go and watch that if you're following the Sebastian case. All right, guys. Bye for now. I'll see you soon.